everybody here. This is a budget meeting for the San Carlos Estates Water Control District, and we are opening the meeting at 6:02 p.m. on August 9th, 2023. A quorum is present. We have, let's see, Jim Bradford, chair is here. Jennifer Dazzo, Vice Chair, Supervisor John Salucci, Secretary Treasurer Chris Lawson, Manager Audrey Menderes. Did I get that right?
You got it right.
Okay. And we have Attorney Richard Pringle, and we have one guest this evening. I'm glad to have you, David Nagy. So, the meeting is now open, and Attorney Richard Pringle asked to say something as we open. So here we are.
Yes, sir. Thank you. This is a special budget workshop. It has been properly noticed as a workshop in the news press. As Mr. Chairman, as a workshop, the difference between a workshop and a meeting of the Board of Supervisors generally is that in a workshop setting, the board is interacting among itself primarily. You do not have to, you're not mandated to allow public input, but you can allow public input. It is at the discretion of the board solely. It's not mandated by law in a workshop setting. And the second difference about a workshop compared to a board meeting is no decisions, no formal decision making can occur. It is for discussion purposes only. And in this particular case, the notice said that you are going to be, in particular, that you're going to be discussing budgetary and fiscal matters, including the 2023-2024 fiscal budget, both revenue and expenses, and any and all other business to come before the Board of Supervisors. So I did put the tag on at the end to give you the ability to discuss other items, but the focus of the notice was, of course, the budget discussion.
Even though other things can be talked about, no decision can be made on those items either.
No decisions, right.
Okay.
And so if there is an item that you discuss this evening that you want to add to the board meeting agenda for the upcoming board meeting, that would be the proper way of handling it. And then you'll put it on the board meeting agenda, and then you can act on it at that time. So it's strictly just a workshop setting. It's very informal and primarily is discussion between the board members and questions that the board members want to ask of staff related to the budget and the preparation of the budget.
As I recalled that from being in the fire department, that was the way that was also handled.
Yes, sir. Same rules apply as in the fire districts. Yes, sir. It's applies to all special districts.
So, okay, the meeting is now open, and I guess I'm going to turn the floor over at the minute, unless any of the supervisors have a question to Audrey and Chris to start to discuss the current budget as the way it stands at the moment. We had several different versions of this.
Different iterations.
And last
of
month
this
we had 3 different versions of it, which started with and I just got one question. How did we ever come up with that really large number for the road project? Was that just
in the email I sent you, you were talking about the special projects that you wanted me to change from road to swales to
the
maintenance?
special projects, this was before I talked to you about anything.
Yeah, I told you in the email. That was just something I threw out there. It was based on a means of starting the reserves, but we took that out.
But yeah, we pulled it out. I was just wondering.
That was to start
because
to start creating a reserve for the
there would have been
road.
3 crosses at the front of the subdivision instead of a sign.
Not necessarily. If you analyze the differences between the CIP phase 1 payoff and the actual GM, it's just a matter of the same amount was being paid, slightly more, but it was netting out an equal amount.
So,
but you took it out.
This is our last year on the CIP.
Yep.
But if we had put that in for this year, it would have added that up and above for this current year, it's next year we would want to add that if we were going to do it. Am I correct?
The CIP Phase 1 payoff is less than what the people have been paying in prior years. And so what I did was I took that difference.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I took that difference and just shifted it over to general maintenance.
Okay, but wouldn't that get tagged on not for this upcoming year, but for the next fiscal year?
It was just an idea for you all to consider if you
Okay.
wanted to start reserves, because at one point there was discussion about you didn't want to see the tax dollars drop low and then come back up high because overall net that was
Okay,
paid.
I guess I'm missing the point here because I understand what you're saying. I'm just missing the dates.
So
Because if we have the CIP that runs out this coming year, we still have to collect for that for this
Yes.
upcoming year.
okay, so the CIP Phase 1 for a Unit 1 property is $349.01 per acre.
Okay,
So it's roughly about $445 to $450. I have it on there somewhere. For acre and a quarter lot, which is almost $300 or $275
Sure.
less than what was charged last year. So I was shifting that difference over from CIP Phase 1 to general maintenance to start building the road reserve and or swale project.
but overall, what you're saying, it was not going to change the amount of money that the residents were gonna pay in taxes.
The total.
Except for those persons who had already paid off their Phase 1, CIP Phase 1 dollar amounts.
Wow.
So so it was just a shifting of sands.
I
But-
get it. I didn't understand that, but and the reason I debated that with you on the phone a few weeks back was because I was calculating in my head that the CIP wouldn't be paid off for another year. Therefore, people would go absurdly nuts if we tacked that on for this year, and all of a sudden they went up $300 per household on the taxes. But in respect to the fact that there was no planning, I'm going to use the word loosely. I'm not pointing a finger at anybody or anything, but I'm saying that our subdivision has got to a point where the road project, as it's ending, there was no real, without starting to do it now, there was no money put back for repaving and doing these other maintenance projects, which, from my understanding, when the water district took on the road project as mandated by law, going through a court to do so,
Right, the final
that
judgment.
we had a budget for maintaining our ditches, our waterways, et cetera, all relating to drainage. When the roads got added in, then we got signage, then we got the asphalt, then we got multiple other things, which we won't have the money to fix if we don't continue taxing for that.
Right.
Man, I'm quitting. I don't want to be the one for that one.
So anyway, we took it out because
I
you
know we
wanted
took it out for this year.
because you thought you had
Well,
hopefully a plan in place that might help to offset that.
as I've said continuously,
We
the
don't
grants
know.
we have applied for,
You don't-
there is
can't count on
nothing
Right.
that's set in stone till you have them.
Guaranteed.
Right.
And as far as the FEMA goes, we have 6 projects that they have approved, but as of the last FEMA meeting that we had a week ago this past Wednesday, they are looking to add back in 3 projects.
So
And-
total 9?
So if they do that, there'll still be 6 because we can't add new projects at this late date. But when Dale was in charge of it, Dale saw that, he said, oh, you're not going to get this and you're not going to get that. The only thing you're going to do is tie up the money for an extended period of time, and then you're going to lose them anyway, so you might as well cut them now and move forward. The new people in charge don't see it like that. And because Ron Edenfield and the new mitigation person for FEMA, and if you don't know it, David, if you don't know what mitigation means, I'd just like to make sure you understand the difference, is that the mitigation is to allow us to plan for the future And anything that FEMA sees that can be a controversial issue, such as causing additional damage down the road in a storm, then that stuff is called mitigation.
Mitigate the
And,
damages.
and they can mitigate it now in lieu of not having to pay tenfold down the road. So the mitigation person, who is a civil engineer and has an engineering degree, was present. The guy that was in that position, or the woman that was in that position before, was just hired off the street to
Bureaucrat.
sit in that position. And they, even though they inspected it, they said, oh no, our roads don't qualify for any damage. The new engineer says, oh yeah, they are. So they're going to try to work those back into it. And when I say damage, anywhere in the road system that there is a dip on the shoulder and cracking, that is caused by a bad foundation. And they can claim that to be a bad foundation because the ditches were full of water, not just during this storm, but a previous storm, or even during our catastrophic rain events in between storms. So those things, they're classifying as storm damage, and they're selecting, we're not the ones that call that shot, but that's something they're putting into mitigation. So it could add to some of the maintenance programs on our roads and or take care of all the road project. We won't know till we get there.
Yeah.
So that's probably months out in the future before we know the answers to that. And those are weekly meetings every week with FEMA, with Ron Edenfield, myself, and the FEMA people. And Peter sets in sometimes, depending on the need. Usually Peter comes in, conducts his business because he's very busy, and he leaves. So he always comes to the beginning of the meetings. So any questions about what I was talking about? Because this relates to the budgets down the road. And we do have one project we're going to apply for in the fall in Tallahassee. And John and probably one other, I don't know how we're going to work that out. It's not a decision-making time, so whether or not a second board member can go, if I'm qualified and can go, I'd like to. If I'm not on the board, it's my election's coming up, I would still like to stay and participate in the FEMA projects and see them through till they're done, which I can do as a private residence like Peter's doing, but that would be up to the board members if I'm not reelected. But the one project is probably in the $80 million range, and it would cover all of the roads out in the subdivision as well as the swales and ditches and culvert pipes in one sweep. So, but we're going to ask our governor to give us the money for that.
So really for this budget, the only question for the board to answer is, do you want to start building that reserve this year, or you want to wait till next year?
Well, here's a key question before we even talk about building a reserve. Have we ever done any estimates of what it would take just to resurface the roads?
We were supposed to do that last year and this past year, were we not?
Yeah,
And it just hasn't happened.
Whether you put aside $350,000 or $3.5 million, it's kind of pointless because, one guy could say, I could do all the roads, seal them all for $1.5 million. And then 3 years later, it falls apart because you use crummy material that actually breaks down the asphalt with a cheat on the sealer. So, we have to look at or is it just Strike Lane and maybe Stillwell, the two main that are constantly the feeder roads? Do we need those to be just looked at resurfacing in phase one? And what is that budget? And I think we need to bring in paving contractors to give us some legitimate estimates so we do know what we're putting aside.
I will work on that.
While we're open for discussion, I think it plays an important role, and although we don't know the answer to it, I believe you were present at a meeting with Matt downtown Bonita when he said that Bonita would like to open Strike Lane. Were you at that meeting?
It sounds recollection, but I don't remember if I overheard it or was present.
Okay, so I'll leave you out of I know I was present at the meeting. I don't remember whether Ron was present or whether Audrey was present, but they point blank said they want to open Strike Lane through traffic. So, well, you can shake your head all you want. The only thing that will protect that is this water board. Okay?
Yeah.
So the water board has to stand, and I know I don't want to open it, and I know John doesn't want to open it, and Jennifer doesn't want to open it, but I don't believe that anybody in our subdivision would truly want it open. The conflict that I see coming is that when they open, if they build that fire station on Strike Lane at the end, that is going to, for me, I know how government works. And that'll be their first phase in opening that road. And they will face the fire station on Strike Lane. The first thing that'll happen when that station opens, every cop car in Lee County will have a clicker. Every ambulance will have a clicker. Every surrounding fire department will have a clicker. As soon as they get clickers, every working person that works for them will begin to get clickers, just sort of like our back gate. Yes, ma'am.
I was just gonna say, I was at the gate the other night, and a fire truck came through, but we're like, where I sit on kind of like Stillwell and Strike, I can tell you probably almost every single night a fire truck comes down Strike, down Stillwell, and out the back gate.
Well,
We're a direct.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to hinder
Yeah.
anybody having a fire in their house, but
Sure.
we've become a route for a Stero.
Well, was it a sterile fire
I believe
truck?
it was a Stero fire truck.
Wow.
Well, that's sad because it doesn't even belong in our subdivision, and that's not being offensive to them. There's no short route. I measured the distance from my street to the traffic light by the church. It's exactly the same distance from the end of Strike Lane to the traffic light as it is from Pinson Drive to the traffic light. So there's no short route coming through our subdivision for a fire truck or anything else that's going into our neighboring subdivision. And there are no firehouses that are within a short distance of that makes any common
Well,
sense
because
for
the one
that to
fire
happen.
station down here, they would just go off the Shangri-La.
Well, they should,
Yeah.
but that's all I'm saying with that is that why ever they're driving there, one of them must live out here somewhere.
Yeah,
Because
that's
they
a
do drive the
possibility.
fire trucks today and ambulances and stuff to their houses to pick up dinner, changes of clothes and stuff like that, which they didn't used to do. Yeah, and our back gate's been knocked down a couple of times by a fire truck.
Well, I'm thinking because of it dropping, it's been
Yeah.
hitting and
Can I
coming
just
off.
say one thing about that? I was at the gate yesterday with my fiance, and we sat right there with the gate was open, and we just stayed there. And it stayed open the whole time we were there. So there's got to be some sort of a sensor that can pick up.
A magnetic
Some-
sensor
yeah.
under the gates.
It did, and so I don't know how or why. I would
That's
love
because
to
you
see-
were stationary.
Right,
Yeah.
I was
If you're going
stationary.
through,
Okay,
if you're not fast
Okay.
enough, those gates start
coming
coming
down on you.
okay, all right, so,
They've been
Fire
happening to me.
Fire trucks are made out of stainless steel today.
yeah.
A lot of your different products that cars and stuff
Yeah,
are
he's
made
not
out of
picking up.
carbon
Yeah, okay.
fiber and things.
Okay.
They're not going to detect that. The clicker will open it, but the car traveling through isn't always sensed
Okay.
in the
It's a
same
lot,
fashion.
it's
So
a
I-
lot taller
so I
too,
got a
so that
false-
gate's starting to come down, but that whole truck is still going through and it's still really
Sure.
tall.
And we have vehicles with trailers, and so from one thing to the next.
True.
But I put the gates back up. One of them got knocked down yesterday, and I went and put it back up. You were there a couple days ago and put one back up.
Just yesterday, we had to tighten the screws because the arm was literally had so much play in it.
And
Somebody
that's
must-
eventually going to strip those
So,
We,
screws.
My fiance,
Not you, but
yeah.
all that movement back and forth.
so
yeah, my
I,
fiance bought a whole 100-pack and for the district. He just gave it to said, "Here, honey, this is for the district." So I have a bunch of nuts, 100-pack of nuts. So I keep them on my
Sounds
golf
like
cart.
Washington D.C.
but the
That's just a good start.
but something going to the budget we probably need to do is put in for a new camera system. I went to straighten up a truck hit the cameras and the big yellow post that was just recently painted. I don't know how in the world they could get over there and do that, but the one on the right-hand side, the yellow post has been over,
Yeah, I
and then
saw that.
our camera sign was leaning. So I went to try to fix it. Well, it was welded under the ground. 3 sides of the weld had broke, and when I went to push it back up, not knowing it was welded, it broke off. So I picked it up and moved it over into the hedge, meaning to go back and pick it up, which I didn't do. But that I don't see any sense in making or paying for repairs for that, because that camera system didn't function very well anyway. And with the new technology today of cameras smaller and more viable, I think we need to put up a couple. But it also comes with signage. We need to put up some signs that says that when you come through these gates, the driver is videoed and the license plate is videoed on the cars. And now
And
you want,
infrared, so they're at night, and they're a cell phone type signal. So you don't have to worry about Wi-Fi or anything. Like job sites have them, construction sites have them. It's not that expensive anymore, data service for that.
so I think we need to budget for something like that in the upcoming budget, and it needs to get installed as soon as we can get some money to do that.
Well, John, you have to-
Along with adding a security light that FP&L offers, like so that, or adding a street light there, like we have along Strike Lane, so that that's a very dark area.
To
at
put
night.
one at the gate, you think?
Pardon?
Put one at the gate and one at the front sign, both?
Both would be fine with
Yeah.
me.
From
It's not that
FPL.
expensive. It's a
Yeah.
minor item.
I think you said they charge $16 a month or something to us.
I'm paying 32.
Yeah, but we should be paying no tax or fees, just the generation as a government entity, I think.
So
I can't
You-
say that.
are you talking about per street light along Strike Lane, or are you talking about the ones you have on your road?
I'm talking about the one I pay for at my house.
Okay, because I have one at my house, and I think I'm paying 14, and I have 3 houses that have
I
them.
have to look. Hold on. I can tell you how much I pay.
Either
And-
way.
and they
it's-
put up the pole and they maintain it. You don't pay any electricity on it. So
Well, you pay the electricity.
I think if we pay the electricity, we don't pay
Yeah.
the
how do they know what the
transmission.
electricity is? Never mind.
They probably just have a fixed rate, I'm sure. But yeah, I think we need to get a light on the gate and a light by the front. And I sent you a bunch of those
You did.
companies
Yes, you
that I
did.
did research on. There may be more.
Okay.
I'll have to do some more research, but I know that there are companies now, pretty cheap technology. I mean, a couple $1,000s or less, you get a couple cameras, work at night, and we're on a cell phone tower, and we just, we can go to like Mint here or T-Mobile, they're cheaper. Say I want an unlimited data plan for $30 a month for video camera. Tell them what, say here's our tax ID, that's what we want.
We were paying, I think, $10 at T-Mobile when they were up and running.
That was through T-Mobile?
And then who did it go to? Somebody's phone, or did it go to a video recorder? Where did it go?
It was online, and it was hooked up to whoever set it up, but we never could get a hold of whoever set it up because one of the cameras weren't working. It was per camera, so we just stopped it
Was that the
because the video
individual?
recording wasn't working.
That was the individual that came and made the presentation to the board, and
No, that
that
was
was different.
several years ago when they initially set those cameras up.
Yeah,
Well, I
we
see minimum
spent quite a
2
bit of money
yeah.
to do that.
Yeah, and I think I see minimum of 2 cameras. One on Stillwell, looking out to the gate, so you see someone coming in, or someone who's coming out. So you get the license plate. So the one on Kakashill looking in would get somebody coming down Stillwell, turning, you see their face, see their license plate, and vice versa. So to me, I see, if it's positioned correctly, 2 cameras.
We do have the 2 poles. There's one on.
Well,
there's
the other
one-
pole's knocked down now.
One is knocked down, correct. But we could utilize that spot for future.
We'll go there and I'll dig a 12-inch hole, 16 inches deep. We'll put in rebar cage, pour in some 4,500 PSI. Let's see who tries to knock that down.
Yeah, it won't be good.
What is the, I know once before the board apparently chose to put in speed bumps on Stillwell. They got taken out relatively quickly after being installed.
That was because of the fire department.
Well,
Oh,
I don't know that the fire department truly has that choice of telling us what we
Private
can do on our
roads, how can
roads
they
or
tell
not.
us?
No, they did.
Well,
I mean,
well-
they did. They
They
it
may have,
happened.
they may have said it and the board listened, but it's not really their choice. And I can tell you that from being a fire chief too.
Actually,
But-
you're right, Jim. It was 1682.
Pardon?
1682s for that light.
Okay, and the issue of what I was thinking was not putting in as many that they did, because they really had a lot of them. But if there was maybe 2 or 3 put in just to get the cars to slow down going into that area, and maybe people would not use that road as much, our neighbors that have a lot of clickers,
Right.
maybe they wouldn't utilize that road as much.
They had them. They had one before and one on either side of the stop sign. So they had.
I would dispute that with you, because they had them all the way down that road, and the holes are still in the road where they put it, where they had them driven in.
You're talking about the
They had
hardened
the,
rubber
they
ones?
had the hardened
Yeah.
rubber ones,
Yeah.
and they went the full length of Stillwell.
I only know up to Dietz.
Up to Dietz.
Yeah,
Oh,
I knew they were there.
Dietz,
They were
yeah.
right before each
Oh.
stop sign at Dietz.
They had
That's the only
them-
one I knew about.
Okay, they had them
That
on.
and
They had them
Stillwell.
on Dietz. I see.
No. On the either side, on Strike, on either side of the stop sign in front of Dietz.
See, I didn't know.
And
I don't remember that, but I think you're right, because I had a Corvette back then, and I remember it.
And
was an
then
issue.
I think they had it at same way with the Stillwell stop sign. But I thought they were just at stop signs. But I
No,
never went down that way.
On Stillwell, they were like, there was like 5 of them.
On Stillwell itself?
Yeah,
Oh, that's probably because Chauncey was trying to stop traffic on Stillwell.
I understand that.
He was the president at the
And
time.
I know.
I could see. Okay, I could see that one.
He had a special interest in some things, but nonetheless, that's all in the past.
But I could
We're
see
only
one
talking
or
about
two on either side of that stop sign still well. So that if you're driving, you're not going to get up to 50 miles an hour before you come down at the gate. Because I've seen some people doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And that road's pretty narrow to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Well.
you hit
Yeah.
people's mailboxes here or hit the curb railing over here.
Well, when I was talking to you guys about the fire station and where it's currently located, if I was a fire chief, Strike Lane is the last place in the world I would put a fire station. We have this one right out this end that can come, it cuts right across the end of Strike Lane, the extension part, straight into our subdivision. So it's not like there's a delayed response from the
You
fire
got one at
department
Lowe's
here.
right there.
And we're within all of the 5-mile circles of a fire station.
Sure.
Where that fire station needs to do, and it might require a petition from the subdivision, is to get them to move it over by the high school and over by, here, if they put it on Strike Lane, if they're going to the subdivision behind us, which is adding 250 more units, that's going to be the prime place that truck runs to. So it's going to be running down that narrow road, being Stillwell, trying to negotiate our rear gate to make 80% of its calls in our neighboring subdivision. If it's put over on, I forget the name
Shangri-La.
of it. Shangri-La. If it's put on Shangri-La just adjacent to the school, it ought to be next to a school. That's added protection for the school and the kids. Then number 2, Shangri-La runs east and, or whichever way it does, but from Livingston down to 41, and it can come into the backside of our subdivision, and it can go through the neighboring other subdivisions through their gates, across the road to those subdivisions. It's like a prime place for the fire station to be without having to negotiate a lot of traffic for every place it's designed to do. And so moving it over a half mile is what they ought to do with that fire station. It shouldn't be in our subdivision. The other thing being is that they have a thing called the an interlocal agreement that they all sign, and I'm sure you're familiar with that the closest unit responds to calls.
I think I wrote it.
Look how close that is if it's on Strike Lane and Imperial or Livingston to Estero's. Estero doesn't have a fire station there. Guess where that fire truck that we pay for will be going on medical calls for a lot of its calls.
Is there not?
It'll be going
Next
to our neighbors. So I would never choose that as a fire chief to be the location of that station, and I just think it will deserve that the community needs to get behind asking it to be moved. It's not our job to do that.
Maybe
So-
this is an issue we should bring up at the annual meeting in September to inform the community that this is an issue that could be impacting all of us. Here's the way we read it so far as a board. Is the community interested in trying to pursue this issue? And who would like to help volunteer? And let's start doing some research on this. Because everything you're saying can be documented so they say, look, here's your rule, 5 mile radius, here's this. And you can present to everybody. If we're allowed to do that in an annual shareholder
Yeah,
meeting.
the insurance underwriters declares how they do those things. So they have to be within 5 mile circles of the next, is what the ideal situation is.
To get the
And,
best rating.
pardon?
To get the best rating.
To get the best ratings.
Yes.
And we're in those circles. We are in those circles anyway. So they don't need that station, whoever decided to put it
Right,
up there.
for
But
you.
I think that was Dan Gorley before the current fire chief was in, and I don't know what the decision-making process there was, unless he had something to do with the city of Bonita, and they were wanting that road open, and they were going to use that as the medium to get it done.
Who are they going to buy the land from?
Well,
They already
they
bought it.
already own.
They already own it.
The Bonita Springs
they do.
Fire Control already owns 3 lots on strike: 10800, 10820, and 10840 on strike. Is that where they're building
Yeah.
Is
it?
that all next to
Well,
the big generator?
there's nobody said they're building it right now, okay? But I know they own the property to build it,
Yeah, why
And-
would they
and-
buy it if they didn't have intentions?
and I know that they will
Right.
do that, and we won't know it until we see the bricks,
Sure.
and that's going to be too late.
Yep. When they pull the permit.
Unless the board does eminent domain, takes the land.
I don't think we get to do that. I think they can pull about the same strings we can, so, and they might have more power.
Yes, they own that whole section.
That would be an interesting battle.
So where's that located on strike?
Well, they definitely got a bigger budget, so they would win.
Okay.
Is that the last?
The last 3 by the generator? Yeah, the generator's here, right? Yeah, there's a big generator here. It's those 3 there. Yep.
What generator?
There's a generator.
There's a big
There's a power unit.
Right at the
power
end
unit
of strike.
generator backup. I
I don't think you.
think it's for
not
the
on-
pumps.
See, it's right here.
Right,
Right,
no.
here.
The Bonita Water.
Yeah,
Oh, at the end of strike?
Yeah, on the right side.
very end,
Okay.
across from the horse farm.
Okay, now I know.
I'm,
what you're
I'm sure that the British people that own it for the last 30 years would love their horses here in the fire trucks at 2 in the
Oh my
morning.
God.
Well,
Poor thing.
If they're going to build a fire station there, that would make.
Right?
That's right when they're going to want to open up strike.
I know, that's
Yeah.
what I've been,
Yeah.
what I've been talking about.
That's the first
the
step to
road,
justify
the
opening
road
strike.
has already got the divider in it.
Right.
The fire station is gonna be the motivation to just open it.
It can be a topic at the annual landowners meeting.
Okay, let's move on with our budget.
Okay. All right. So, in answer to your question, it was mud thrown on the wall. Your original question. Where did that number come from?
So you went
Oh.
went like this in the wind and threw it. Okay.
And you know, we all have
And
to,
it was basically justified by the differences between the CIP payoff and what they were going
and I
and what
understand
they were
that.
being previously charged.
sitting here with you now, I understand that. That was not, I couldn't figure it out, and I was concerned about just seeing an extraordinary large number this time.
Yep.
And seeing the crosses at the end of the street. So, but I personally think we should postpone that till next year. And that's my opinion. There's 2 other board members here.
I agree because you have a.
I agree because we don't know what's going to come in the
Right.
next 6 months with FEMA grant.
I
I assume something's going to come in.
would like, there is so much grant money out there. And maybe one of the things this board needs to consider is hiring a grant writer. Because a grant writer could more than pay for their job if in fact they were good at what they do. The fire departments all hire them, and they do.
Okay.
And so therefore, if we had somebody
We get
don't need-
emails all the time. I usually delete them because they're just junk emails, but I can go back and undelete one if you are interested in some of the advertisements.
I would like to see some of them.
Yeah.
I've never seen any of them, so I would like to see some of them. And
I'd like to read them too, and I'd also like to then take some of them and approach FGCU's business school and ask if there's any students or graduate students who like to be supporting a grant writing program, get those professors to coach them, and maybe we only need a part-time professional grant writer.
yeah, I wasn't suggesting a full-time one
Yeah.
because I don't think we have a full-time job, but I'm thinking that if we could get the money that's available, especially while DeSantis is in office, he's all for water management and water
Sure, quality.
quality. So
That's your
we
job.
have all kind of opportunities to get money right now that could include repaving our roads, redoing our system, while this all exists. But FEMA is going to cover the weirs, putting gates in them to be able to drain them down. FEMA is going to cover a new culvert pipe by Strike Lane underneath the road. FEMA is going to cover the ponds at the front, where the current
Retention ponds.
ponds are, sediment ponds. They're going to dig those out to 12 feet.
Oh, really?
There'll be water in them all the time in the front one. Not
Wow.
the front one being the furthest one in
We
toward
might
our
want to
southern.
fence that. So
we need a better fence than
No,
liability.
they will take care of all of
Okay.
that. It's all in their plan.
Nice.
So you don't have to worry about what we need to do. There's laws and rules that
And they'll
apply.
follow that. Okay,
And
good.
that will all fall into place with it. They are going to cover any place we had erosion areas around. So that means they're going to clean out some of the canal system around the outside, and they're going to fix the areas. Those are all projects that are in it right now. And there's 6 of them. I don't know how many I just covered. I probably forgot one.
I think that was 5, but it's okay.
But then they're going to add back in 3. So if they do that, then that'll include some of the road projects and stuff that we won't have to pay for. So all the rear gates were covered in that. And all of the signs, and every sign in the subdivision was covered in that.
and the cleanup.
And well, yeah, the cleanup was not a project in the fashion that we're talking about. The cleanup was an initial thing that took
Right.
place, and they're paying for all of that 100%, and they're paying 100% of these other projects. So, but the ones are classified as projects. The first ones were classified as emergent kind of thing that the Dale was able to authorize and take care of. The other ones had to have a committee work on those. So those are the things that right now what we've managed to pull forward with all of these meetings and things that I've been going to.
You know, when we did originally, obviously I wasn't here, but the original bonds to build the roads and everything, was there ever discussions about putting in a sidewalk on at least one side of at least, say, Strike Lane? Because I've had people come up to me like they have kids around, they're walking and say, they feel like it's dangerous walking on the roads.
My understanding from Judy, what Judy has expressed in meetings when you were on the board with her, she had said that they were told they could not because it was not part of the water management duties. So they were not able to at that time.
Yeah, the only other the thing I don't understand about that, and not that I just.
But they got the bike lane, so they were.
Well,
But
is that there's no
Bicycle takes precedence over pedestrian?
There are
well, I
no.
mean,
There
that's
are,
that's one strip for walking and bicycling or whatever.
there's
you
no
wanna call it.
markings that indicate them to be either way,
No.
Yeah.
including bicycles or walking. So I can't relate to that as being any more than a pull off for a car, because there's no markings that indicate it to be a bike
Yeah,
path
it's not-
area.
it's not enough
There's no
space there.
signage that say that bicycles have priorities.
No.
So, and I don't know how you build a road. I thought in today's world, you build a road, you have to provide that kind of stuff for the handicapped.
That's
the
all I
whatever.
know is what Judy said in meetings.
I know, and I don't disagree with her. I'm just simply saying, I don't know how you build a road and how they got a road approved without that, except I agree with you on the one side that we're a water management district and we only had certain obligations and rights. But I thought when you put in roads, the new improvements had to be put in with them. I thought that was state laws and stuff, so, but, okay.
What's in here? Okay, so the easy part of the budget, if we wanted to do the easy part of the budget, is the CIP budget. We got the new amortization schedule,
Is that this one right here we're talking about?
CIP.
Everything mine says
I
CIP?
can't read that far.
Let me see what you got at the
All
top. What does it say
maintenance.
there?
I have mine combined.
Yeah, so it says 2023, 2024 proposed CIP budget.
That's what mine says.
Okay.
All right.
That's what mine-
So the payoff that we have is $311,916 and change, which rounds up to $917. And the interest on the amortization was $9,001.
proposed CIP budget.
So that's what our payoff is. And so part of the CIP budget is we have to add to it the additional cost of management, which is the discount for the tax assessor and the commissions. And then we have an administrative fee that we pay Lee County Property Appraiser. And then we have the bank analysis fees. We offset all the bank analysis fees come out of the CIP checkbook, but then we go back and we reimburse those fees that are attributable to 7870. So that's where the CIP other income $1,800 comes in. So that's a guess. Now, if we are able to pay off the loan in February and not extend it out to August, we will be able to cancel the account analysis program with Bank of America. We cannot do it until the loan's paid off. That would save those dollars, but we have to account for the dollars for right now. In addition to this, I put in the CIP Phase 2 payments, 50%. That is the amount of the billing that we're sending out.
That's the letter.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is.
Where are you? Which column are you in?
The CIP
Thank you, dear.
payments.
Yep, got it.
So
So you're anticipating generating $86,393.
if everybody pays half, which is what the billing's for.
That's what the letter says.
But it doesn't really matter because we're not counting on that money for any expenses here. It's just
It's a slush fund basically. If it happens.
it's going to go back to Florida Prime or to the general maintenance unreserved funds because that's where those monies came from.
to originally pay it off.
Right. Mhm.
Right. It's yes.
So
sir.
the gross revenues
It's to
that
reimburse the district those monies, the maintenance account, those monies.
So the gross revenues that we need to pay off the CIP loan and the other attributable expenses is $338,038. That takes the
What's that number? 338.
338,038.
That's to pay off.
That is what we have to assess the landowners to meet this budget. So that is based on the weighted acreage of 968.575 for a 1 acre lot in Unit 1. That takes that unit cost to $349.01 an acre, or $436.26 for an acre and a quarter. For Unit 2, it would be $209.40 per acre, and for Unit 3, it would be $523.51 per acre. So when you see this figure here, this $300 net remaining CIP Phase 1 balance, that's we always get something in the way of interest and refunds from Lee County, but we really don't ever know how much it might be, and so I've just projected about $300 there. And that's really what that net balance is. Now we will enter the year probably with about $1,000 or $1,100 in the checkbook.
How many actual pay? I asked this before. Is it like 800 some? How many actually pay taxes, whether a physical landowner or a developed piece of property?
On what?
Here in the division.
We have 800 and 722. We have 862 rows of data, and then you take off 3 rows for Izell, Monty, and the district. So that takes that 862 down to 859. But not everybody is paying on CIP Phase 1.
Some people
have
paid it off. Is it fair to say it's 800 taxpayers about? Or is there more than 59 paid it off?
I don't have a count of that.
So when that was paid off early, because I paid all of mine off at the time that we put the roads in. So that money went directly to reducing the debt.
I mean, I think there's still some Josie girl has some that she's paying it. That entity's paying. And I'll tell you right now, I can look at it right
Some
now.
entity named Jersey Girl.
Josie girl.
Oh,
Josie Girl?
Oh,
That's mine. That's mine.
oh,
I mean, when I look at this 254 assessment, which I have right here, it has, as far as on here, it has 819 rows, but I have a number of rows that have 0. So for me to go back and count all those rows that have zeros, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. I'm scanning this real quickly. 21, 22, 23.
And how about all of the people in the
25,
phase that we
26,
paid
27,
off
28.
a couple of years ago? They're not
29.
making any payments right now.
Yeah, 30. 31. 35, 36. 37. 38. 9, 40. 41. 42. I'm counting about 42.
There's 42.
so 777. So call it 775 taxable entities, persons, LLCs, whatever, trusts, landowners,
Parcel.
land parcels, whatever. Okay. I'm just trying to figure out because at some point, and this goes back to points that Jim's brought up, except for the 3 acres of the potential fire station.
That's about an acre, 1.8 acres.
Okay, but 3 lots there.
Yeah, but they have to pay taxes.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
pay
they pay-
taxes. Yeah,
they
but
pay
there's
taxes.
3 lots there. How many lots here are left that could be developed? 100?
Well, you don't.
200?
You-
I mean,
you can't use
we're not
it-
going to have 5,000 taxpayers in this place ever.
No, you can't really use that. You can't use that as a way to try and figure that out because, like, I have my house is, and Jim, you have the
No,
same
this
thing.
is-
We have lots attached to our houses,
But
so we're one lot entity.
But
Yes.
this is the point I want to try to make to Tallahassee, to anybody else. Got 775 taxpayers right now, landowners, parcels, whatever. 819 total. We only have so much more land to develop. Let's say it's another 200. We're gonna have 1,000 taxpayers in a 1,000-acre section that's critical to the flow of water from Okeechobee down to the Everglades. And you expect us to keep taking the burden for all this infrastructure? Please, Tallahassee, help us. Help us help you.
Well, if you're
Because
in
we
that,
don't have the land. It's not going to be 5,000 apartments in here.
no. If you're talking in that perspective, then you want to be working off of the original number of 859
Okay, 859 then.
because that's our general maintenance.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, something that you need to think about when you're talking is that we have a fixed rate taxation we don't have a millage rate.
Right.
When fire departments every year, when you have building up around and everything that happens, their millage goes up. They don't have to go back and ask the taxpayers for anything, and they don't get the kind of impact that this water district gets. When we ask when we raise our budget here, the taxpayer directly feels us asking them for the money, or even though we don't have to ask for it, they see it and they feel it. When a fire department's millage rate goes up, nobody comes to the board meetings hardly. I mean, a handful maybe, but there's no question about it. It doesn't change anything. The millage rate just goes up, and when you have additional building, when I was talking millage, when you have a vacant lot, it's one rate. When you put a house on it, so a fire department gets money when you put the house on it, and the valuation of the property goes up. We have swampland out here that's just nobody pays anything different, whether you have a house on it or whether you don't. So we have a fixed rate period that people pay, and there's no way that we get money to fix the roads or way to get money to fix the ditches or whatever we have to do. And when we took on the road project, that now is going to become a big issue down the road from now. But with all due respect, roads have to get repaired.
Right.
And we, in a sense, maybe we were lucky that the hurricane hit and we got the signs and we got the gates and we got this and we got that, but that doesn't solve the problems.
No. We've got bills that are coming that will continue to come.
So you look like you were really questioning what I said there.
Thank you for giving me the numbers, and now I know what to work with.
But I've sent you the tax roll too.
Yeah.
Okay.
One other thing, Paul, I'm sorry. So, in essence, this coming year, the letters we're sending out asking the taxpayers to pay the money that we already spent to pay off their CIP program, we're asking those taxpayers to give it back to the general fund. So, if in fact they did that, that would compensate us for the $300,000 that we are just took out.
It's going to refund what was previously taken out of the prime.
Right, but that's around $300,000 if I'm correct.
It's 172,000.
172 paid
Okay.
off the CIP
Okay,
one, right? Or
okay.
CIP two, yeah.
So, but what I was trying to do was get we had put in 330 for road repairs, or around 300 for road repairs. That I said let's take it out. If we actually got that other money, it would actually give us something toward the road repairs.
It's going to give us something to do whatever repairs
Right.
the board decides to do. Yes.
Okay.
So that's the CIP. That's pretty straightforward, and we have our millage there. So there's not a whole lot of flexibility there.
So what will in 2025, the typical taxpayer back here, if they're paying $7,500 in taxes, about, let's say, $1,500 of it is the CIP and general maintenance on average?
No.
No?
No. They have an acre and a quarter lot in Unit 1. Last year they paid $725.71 for their CIP Phase 1, if they still owed it. And then they paid $683.79 for their general maintenance.
So 13, 14. So when I say $1,500.
Okay.
So
But this year they're not. This year they're only going to pay $436 for Phase 1 in Unit 1. And then depending on where you end up on your general maintenance, it could be the same thing as last year, or it could be something
yeah,
slightly
most people
more.
would be $500-$600 range. Okay. So then in 2025, if we do nothing other than general maintenance, most people's taxes are going to go down.
Right.
$500, $600, $700, $800. Some people $1,000 if they have oversized lots, whatever. Let's say $750. So I'm just wondering.
400. I would go for 400. They're going to go down maybe 400. My lot says it's going to go down nothing because I paid it off. Jim's lot, if he's paid it off, it will go down nothing because we paid it off already.
Okay.
So it just depends on the situation.
Because one thing I'm noticing is that what is charged to our lots in Lee County, even if people are homestead, damn thing keeps going up.
Oh,
Yeah, well, it doesn't go up here, even if the property values go up, unless we raise it here.
Right.
This is a set rate, fixed number.
Okay. Do we eventually have to do anything legally with the tax authority if we have to go back in 3-4 years from now, if we don't get enough grant money and float a $500,000, $1 million bond for repairs?
It would probably be cheaper to borrow the money than it would be to do a bond issuance. A whole lot cheaper.
She's right, depending on the amount of revenue you're trying to generate. If it is a smaller dollar amount, if it's a $500,000 amount,
Yeah,
then
you
yes,
borrow it, yes.
a straight loan, conventional loan transaction works. I've got other water control districts who have done that to buy capital improvements. If you are talking about a resurfacing project of all of the roads and it's $2 million, then that may be better accomplished through a bond validation. And that's what would happen. You would do another bond validation action. So you would do the bond validation action, you would get the final judgment supporting the bond validation, and then that would be the basis for the additional charge or the additional non-ad valorem assessment. It would be just like you have now with the CIP Phase 1. On the assessments, until you did that again, the CIP Phase 1 assessment, separate assessment, would drop off. If you did another bond validation in the future,
The new assessment.
it would reappear. It would be a separate assessment that would reappear.
But we could, as the CIP runs out, and Chris was correct on the fact that a percentage of that goes away this year, which is going to reset some of the taxes down, and it's going to probably make a bigger impact next year if we bring some of that back
Up again, yeah.
to some people. But if we start collecting a certain amount over the years, we may not need to go for a $2 million
Correct.
set. So
And that funding would be placed into a reserve and could be designated specifically for maintenance, a reserve for maintenance, and those funds would be a part of the maintenance assessment, the one assessment, where now you have two or three assessments.
Exactly.
It was three assessments
Now
for the
it's two.
phase. Now it would be two, and then once the Phase 1 assessment is paid off, it's going to be one assessment for maintenance only that you're going to charge. The number, the dollar amount of that assessment is going to then have to cover everything that you do. Sure. And that's what you're driving at, is the construction of the roads were such that you haven't had to do a lot of maintenance up till now. But as the roads age and
the
deteriorate,
trucks we have in the construction.
then yes, or from use, then you are at some point going to have to do substantial maintenance versus small maintenance. And the other thing that you don't have as much as other water control districts, you don't have a lot of pumps and other equipment like that to move water that other water control districts have. But you do have weirs, you have canals. The canals banks are continually slipping into the canals
Erosion.
themselves.
Well, that's some of where we're at today. That's been going on for years now, including filling up our ditches.
And your water control plan should address all of that and should take into account what you need to do in the future to maintain those water conveyances, those canals and weir structures and everything that you have. So there's some part of that you are that we need to also address in the water control plan.
I want to bring up something for us. While I'm asking these questions about the estimating for road repairs and all these costs, maybe have a new bond, $2 million. resurface a road, or $3 million, whatever it costs. Bonita Springs Utility, private entity, for-profit entity. Spoke to a couple people on their board in a social setting, and they have their eyes set on this area to get us all in sewer. And I looked at him and I said, "Are you an engineer?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "You realize as a civil engineer, the cost of doing that with lift stations and everything else?" He says, "Yeah, we're thinking of requiring the big macerating pumps at every person's property and turn all your stuff into effluent and you pump it out." I said, "Yeah, and who's paying for the electricity to pump that out? Right now I got a natural feed to a natural septic system." I said, "Do you realize 37% of the state of Florida is still septic?" "Yeah, but you're right in the middle of everything else is sewer." I said, "Yeah, you got a 30-inch main running down Strike."
Yeah, but you do know that's a high pressure main.
I told him
which does
that.
not
I told him that. I said,
contribute.
"So you can't tap into that one." He said, "Oh, I know. We'd have to." I said, "So the reason I'm thinking all this is if they ever try to do that, all these roads are going to get dug up.
So that's part of the plan. We got to make.
We
sure
got to
that-
make sure if they're going to do something like that, we're in the driver's seat of that plan, not somebody else dictating to us."
Now, the other thing being is that, speaking with Matt, downtown City of Bonita, he told me, and this is something I brought up at a meeting 3 years ago, practically. It was about 3 years ago, maybe a little bit less. But I brought up at a meeting about the fact that they were doing tests on the outflow water, and Lee County was doing those tests, and that there was fecal matter and stuff found in those tests, and there was now reason to force us into septic systems. I brought this up at a meeting. Sewer. I brought this up at a meeting recently with Ron Edenfield and Matt downtown. I think I brought it up again when you were present.
You and I, yep.
And Matt made a point of the fact that these tests were conducted by Bonita Springs paying for them and Lee County paid for them, and the paperwork and stuff is all in place for the fact that our discharges, even during the Bill Morris time, was not. And I'm sorry. It's just that he always said everything was perfect, and at that night at that meeting, he reassured me that this wasn't right, that it didn't exist. Well, the paperwork's in, it does exist, the tests were done, and the fecal matter was in the water. So, therefore, just what you just said, you were talking to another entity, which is a private enterprise.
For profit.
For profit, not the city of Bonita Springs. I'm speaking to the people at the city of Bonita Springs, and they have all the documentation of these tests that were done 3 years ago. So we are probably on a list for being forced to do sewers in some future date.
So why would Lee County allow septic systems right on the edge of the berm
I
of
can't
the
answer the
of
question.
the
Of course, they're
swale?
zoned agriculture.
I mean, that doesn't make any sense.
Well,
It never has to me, but anyway.
the fact is that today the houses being built out here are 4,000 plus square feet. The roofs cover half of the property, the driveways, the swimming pools, the extra garages, and there's very little drainage, soak-in kind of drainage left on the properties, even though they're supposed to contain their water and soak it into the ground. We know very well during catastrophic rain events and the kind of rains we have, that doesn't happen like that. It runs off. And therefore, the properties aren't soaking in the water, let alone the septics that they have, which are built up on big mounds, and all that water runs off to someplace else. So it's not just about being out on the edge of a ditch, but it's the fact that the drainage we have for soaking into the ground is going away, and with the houses getting bigger, then our neighbors are doing the same thing all the way around us. It's just an inevitable event, whether it's true or not. When they decide to tell us we have to do it, they have the control. And we won't have any control over that. The state will tell us to do it.
And it'll be like Cape Coral. Everybody gets a $30,000 bill
Yep.
payable over 20 years. All of a sudden, you got another $2,000 a year in your taxes, plus the charge of the sewer bill to a private utility. So
I
now
know.
your water for $25 a month in
It's
Springs, it
75.
could be
Yeah.
$150 a month, especially if you don't have a well.
When I owned property and I still own the property out off of John Morris Road, Oleander Drive, all of those back in there, you know what I'm talking about. We paved the roads, and guess what? They came along next year or two, they dug them up and put down sewers. You think they put down city water? No. Today we're still on wells, but they put down the sewers.
Wow.
And so they didn't give us any choice, and our roads were new. And they were private roads.
And they
still
did not,
private
and
roads.
they didn't fix them.
Oh, they did. They put them back. But the fact was, we had to start paying for sewers now. It was what John said earlier,
Yeah.
being in the driver's seat, knowing when projects are planned, and our engineer being on top of that kind of thing, so that we don't start to do a remodel job or fixing streets or doing this or that when they're going to turn around to tear up the roads in a year or two down the road for putting in some sewers. I don't want to be the person who goes out and starts getting them all excited about that, so I don't want to talk to them. But with all due respect to that, John's correct.
If we can't be in the driver's seat, I want us to be in the front passenger seat. Have some influence over this.
Let
'Cause I
them
see
tear it
coming.
up and
When
rebuild
I heard
it.
that from Bonita Springs utility people, I'm like, it's going to come. Probably in less than 5 years, my prediction, based on the way that guy was talking.
The state of Florida has a huge push to place everybody they can
On sewer.
onto sewer
Well,
throughout the state of Florida,
This
and
is-
especially
But
in
look
your
where we
location.
are physically, geographically. Look where we are. You do it. You put a drone up and start flying up really high. We're this 1,000 acres of trees, and you go down some of these streets, you think you're in the middle of nowhere,
excuse me.
and everything around us is developed and continue to develop. At some point, they're going to say, you know
You
what?
too.
This is a
Yeah.
blueberry in the sea of strawberries. Change them.
Yeah, you
Yep.
too. Yeah. Yes, sir.
So I don't
That's a
want a
big push.
budget for road services and pull money in when,
It might be
Well,
a mute
but
point.
So that's
Yes.
why I'd rather get these numbers. Understand, we're landlocked financially. The most we could get is 1,000 taxpayers here, probably the most. If some people want to buy 100% wetlands, pay Army Corps of Engineers and DEP, because the rules right now are, if you have an acre, you're only allowed to develop 40% of it. So you're going to buy most lots here 1/4.
Yeah.
So you're going to develop like half an acre, and the rest of it has to stay wooded.
Unless the Supreme Court ruling changes that.
State Supreme Court.
Well,
Well,
The-
the
Yeah,
U.S.
Florida State
Supreme,
Supreme
the U.S. Supreme Court has already changed Title 10 protection. The definition of Title 10 protection is a matter of whether the state of Florida adopts.
Well, all I
that
know
or
is
not.
right now,
Yeah.
the Army Corps and DEP take 6 months to a year screwing up somebody building something here, and it costs a lot of money. So you go buy a $200,000 lot back where we are, that's quote wetlands, you'll be $150,000 before you put your footers in,
yeah.
maybe more, and a year's time delayed, and then you can't develop the whole land anyway.
So back to the question of when
Budget.
to
Yeah.
when to build the roads. You can establish, you can anticipate that at some point in the future you are going to have to resurface the roads, and you can begin to build a reserve now for that eventual occurrence. If in year 3 of that anticipated event you realize, you're told, oh, we're going to install sewer in 2 years, you don't have to resurface the roads by a date certain. You can continue to build the reserves for the eventual resurfacing, and you can postpone the resurfacing for the 2 years until after you're done. So you can build the money, you can build your reserves for that event. You don't have to set a hard date for the event to occur. That's flexible.
Yeah.
They're two separate items.
You always know you're going to have that.
We have the basic
rain-
maintenance of the roads. No matter
Right.
At
what.
some point, you're going to have to resurface
Yeah.
the roads, whether it's in 2
Whether
years
you
or
know-
5
Which
years.
is why we need an estimate,
Yeah.
several estimates. What does it cost to resurface the most busy road? Strike. Second busiest, Stillwell. Third busiest, I don't know, Dietz or some of the ones up front. We got to start looking at where the volume of traffic is. Because some of these roads here, you hardly ever see people in and out. Others, like ours, Golden, oh my God, it's like put a toll booth up there. There are people down that road all the time.
Yeah.
So,
Well, then you got roads that are longer with more people.
oh yeah, some of our roads are what,
Really
mile and a half,
long.
2 miles long.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
That's a substantial
Lucy's
cost
huge.
to
Oh, yeah.
resurface that.
So what we need is, what's it per mile? Because that's how they'll probably do it,
That's what I was
for
told. yes.
resurfacing. Now, some of these companies, and this is the problem, because I understand that these roads were not built to normal DOT standards. So a normal company will come in, they have the big machine, they grind it, they're churning up the road, it's going up there, there's another guy who's heating it up, and they're applying it right back on.
Laying it.
They take your own stuff and put it back down and add new stuff to it, basically. Will we be able to do that if our roads are not up to DOT standards? I don't know. I mean, maybe that's a question for Ron, but I think that's going to impact also money for a budget in the future, even a maintenance budget. Because if they're not up to DOT standards, then you're like, I can't resurface that road. Maybe it's not enough
The
tarmac,
depth,
maybe it's not enough
yes.
asphalt. I don't know.
Generally, it's the base material that dictates that, and if you don't have sufficient base underneath the surface, the pavement surface, then they want to come back and add more base.
Are there records? It's either at Morris, or do we have records of the original building of the roads, especially down Strike, where there's the two canals and they merged and made the
I
the
don't.
two
What year was that?
2005?
About
That was
right.
when it was done.
I think the county may have records, but also I don't think Morris Depew was the engineer of the district at the
There was
time.
another company
But I
that
think
did
there
it.
was another firm that does road work, road engineering, and I think they are the ones who did the engineering.
I'd like
work
to
for
see
the-
that report. I
Yeah.
can tell looking at because I've read everything. I never found that yet. I'd like to know what is the base and what were the depth of measurements, because that's going to impact
your
our
construction
costs when we ask somebody to resurface the roads.
Well, I can imagine that whatever the cost is per mileage at this point in time would be far different.
I'm not looking for historical costs. I'm looking for
Yes,
structural,
Right.
structural. Okay,
structural
gotcha.
components.
Gotcha.
Yeah, in 5 years from now, it's going to be a whole lot more too.
Yeah.
Well, and so you take, if you do the study now and establish a cost now, then every year hereafter, you just have to add the inflation factor to it to know what you got to have in 3 years or 5 years from now.
It can be a 3-year plan, just in increments, and then work
Yeah.
off of that. It doesn't have to be like a one lump sum.
So in conclusion, we're not going to put any money in this 23-24 budget.
So you don't
But
want
I
to.
think we need to get our estimates together for 24-25.
And we should take that extra money we get in from the CIP project that we might get paid for and earmark that for maybe future road.
As a reserve.
Even small maintenance stuff, like the breaking the sides and stuff with it.
Yeah, so,
I agree with that.
okay.
So the direction, not decision, but the direction is don't increase
Right,
The
and
total.
that was taken out.
this year. Just
Yeah, that was taken
stay
out.
with the about the same number.
You know, I noticed you corrected our language there, but with all, this is a workshop, and doesn't matter what language we use, we're not voting on anything tonight. We're only putting numbers in place. They'll get voted on at the board meeting.
We're discussing numbers.
So,
So are we done CIP? We'll go to general budget or not?
Unless you have any other questions
No.
of the CIP, that one's pretty straightforward. So go to page 2 of the general maintenance, because that's the expenses. Because the expenses are going to back into the assessment. So for drainage, I have $156,000, and what that includes is 2 times cleaning at $36,000 of cleaning, swale and road trimming at $15,000, which was basically from the prior year. Pesticide spraying at about 2 times at $3,500, $6,000 for just miscellaneous minus repairs, and culvert cleaning for $50,000. I don't have in the drainage budget or the engineering budget any monies for the preparation of the 2024 water control plan or any water control plan, which we need to have done. And I do not have anything budgeted for the survey that Ron would like to do on the water flow. Remember at the last meeting, you all gave him permission to come up with a dollar amount for that survey.
Did he give us a dollar amount yet?
I have not seen a dollar amount yet. So I don't have anything in the budget for that dollar amount. And I
Well,
don't have anything, even though I've asked for anything
Would
in
you
there
like
for
me
the
to
water
call him
control
tomorrow
plan.
and ask
Yeah,
him?
we need that. I'd like to see that. Because without that data of where the water is flowing or not flowing correctly, that's going to then dictate the basis of a future water control plan, what has to be done. Can't write a water control plan if we don't know how well the water's flowing. Correct?
Correct.
So I think that in order of magnitude of importance,
And I don't
Ron's survey's got to be in the budget somehow.
Right, and I don't know, and maybe drainage is not the proper place for that. I mean, it would be to me, my mind, but it could be engineering costs. Whether or not the $50,000 for culvert cleaning, based on your recent forays with vacuum dig, is adequate or not.
Yeah, do we get it back with them, or there was
We-
18,000 or something?
We need to speak with the engineer in reference to
Yeah.
that because Ron made some modifications to
Yeah,
that.
He and I
which-
talked to them about it.
Okay,
Yes.
so as long as everybody knows that, he'll bring that up at the upcoming board meeting and we'll discuss what the changes were and where we stand today. So,
So I mean, that
and this is
50,000.
gonna be a question for you also at that point, but seeing as how we're not making any decisions tonight, let's
Only
not
giving
talk.
direction.
Huh?
Only giving direction.
Okay.
So that 50,000 for the culvert.
He's a GPS right now, that's all. Giving direction.
That's
That 50,000 for the culvert cleaning doesn't have to be all inclusive. It could be just for part of the neighborhood, or we can increase that number depending on what you all, how you all want to approach that.
You know something that, God, this is totally off the board, but we have to talk about some of these things at some time. Since how this is a workshop, it might be the time to talk about some of it. Some of these, there's got to be probably a day when we make a decision based on what these big companies now want to charge us for doing relatively minor work and taking care of and maintaining our ditches. My thoughts is, I was just going down toward Naples last night and I see this little vacuum pot on the back of a trailer that this company's using cleaning the bigger ditches, okay? And it's a professional company. And I have to wonder that maybe there's not a point when we decided either to rent that kind of equipment and hire an operator ourselves, and maybe they take a few months to go around and do this stuff, and then we can discontinue it. We don't have to keep the equipment, we don't have to do this, and we don't have to do that. But it would be a lot cheaper. There was a company that came out a few weeks ago after Vacuum Dig started and did a demonstration at the very back of the subdivision. I went down and watched them do it. And the only thing they didn't have was the vacuum pot. And if they had had that, they could have done everything that Vacuum Dig did for a third of the price. And that's what they were proposing. at the time, but we also didn't know where Vacuum Dig was going to be at that time either. It was just that the question came up, they called me, and I said, well, let's look at it. So that's why I went down and took a look at what they were offering. But a small company can do the same thing, or a couple men can do the same thing with renting the equipment and doing it a lot less money than what these big companies are. There are things that a small company may not be able to do, such as the big pipes between the roads and things like that. But for the normal culvert cleaning, which is 90% of what we do, and then coming back and they make these small excavating machines that'll do 3 feet wide or 4 feet wide, and we have an entire ditch project from the beginning of the subdivision to the back. Now, I'm talking about this, but I'm also crossing my fingers and hoping that through some of the grants we get, that it will include a ditch cleaning project, which will take us up 10 years, and we won't have to worry about it. It won't be something we have to pay for.
But you still have to build in a reserve. You're still
Well,
going to have to want to
we have to
consistently build a reserve
Sure, and
for
we have
those
to plan.
costs.
We have to plan for actually physically having to do it. We can't count on somebody else to give us the money. So I'm not not changing our routing at all. I'm just saying that maybe we should look at a different concept on how we get the job done. And maybe we should be looking at a couple of guys who will work for 6 months every day doing that kind of work, and they'll be on one road for a week and another road for a week, but all they're making is an income. And when they get done, we've saved 2/3 of the amount of money that it would have cost us when these big companies are done. It's only
With Vacuum Dig, we are, and the way we structure that contract is they're doing these 5 days, and then Ron and all of us, we assess it. And I wonder if now we should take this company and say, what would you do in 5 days?
Well, we're scheduled on the 22nd of this month to get together with another company, Shenandoah, and they're going physically with Jim and myself around the district to tell us what they can provide for us and what they would be charging. So we have in plan
in
another
lieu of
option.
having a company that comes in and starts working out.
Yeah.
There was things that Ron wanted this company to do, and he diverted them to that. Okay, so but we did stop them on the 5th day, I believe it was, and said until we figure out what we want to do and what we need to have done, we don't want to continue with this. So they did get stopped at that point. So
I wrote the contract so it could be terminated at any time.
I think so. I remember reading it. So.
Yeah, that was
Yeah, because what
intentional.
I did is the first couple days, I was going in and out of here, and I gauged down the streets like Catskills, and 2/3 of the day they were still in the main perimeter canal cleaning out.
Right.
Then by like 1 o'clock, they started coming down the street, and I called Ron. I said, "At this pace, they're going to be here for 30 days."
yeah, and that's
So I said, and I asked the guys, where'd you have most trouble in the street? They said, oh, on the perimeter, it was all clogged up. I said, okay. So I'm thinking maybe a lot of those perimeters are clogged up.
Right.
Focus on those, and then water will flow easier than
and
each
that
individual house.
That wasn't in their contract.
But they did
Yeah,
it.
but they
and,
did it,
and Ron
yeah.
got him to change it.
Yeah.
Yes, there was some. I also put language in the contract that gave the engineer
Authority
the authority to redirect their
And he
activity.
did
he
that,
did.
and
He
that's
did
why
do
the
that.
project tipped over the deep end. And we said, look, until the board talks about it,
We're
it
done.
needs to stop.
So it'd be interesting as a benchmark. This other company, Shenandoah,
Yes.
is interested in doing it.
We'll
And
find
we like
out.
them. Maybe they take 5 days on perimeter canals cleaning out, see how far they get.
I know a company called Sweeperman. Maybe we should call them.
Swept under the rug.
Yeah, so anyway, there is a plan in place
Okay.
to continue to find out options for the maintenance of the ditches and the drainage.
Okay.
All right, so that's strange. So do you have anything that you want to add to that, delete from that? I know you're talking with Gerald about the canal cleaning. Is the 2 times 36,000 the
That's-
right number that we want to be at?
The question of that number isn't bad. Only thing that I have to say about it is that I don't think it should be written in. I think we need to put this in under, and I don't care what we call the term, a general maintenance. We as the board should know what we have to spend. But when we put the number in the budget, it says, okay, I get all this money. So that's going to be my bid. And I think somehow we need to be able to ask people for bids without our
Well, they're not going to.
public record.
Well, they don't. They don't necessarily have to see what. This
Public-
is for your
public
notes.
record.
These are
Public
your notes.
record.
These
They
are
can-
your notes.
They can ask
Right.
any time for a public records report, and
But this isn't a public record at this point, is it?
Yes, it
Oh,
is.
yeah.
everything we do is.
Okay.
So I'm thinking we need to revisit how we put it in our budget so that the numbers don't show up as, okay, this is, so the board knows what the number is or about what it is, but when we ask for bids, we have a general maintenance budget that it comes out of, and maybe Tony's ought to be looped into that so that there's one big pot that we spend the money out of, and we know Tony's gonna be 110, 120, whatever it is. We know that the other project's gonna be about this, but they shouldn't be able to look at our numbers and say, hey, we get all that money if we bid it. Then they don't have any obligation to go out and be a reasonable person and say, I can do it for X amount of dollars.
Right.
When they can look at our budget and say, oh, you're gonna pay me this? Okay, I got it.
Okay. So the only thing in our actual budget when we publish these are our notes.
I'm listening.
But the only thing that's in the actual budget and based on the GLs that we have set up in the QuickBooks is swale mowing. That's the only one that's really isolated that anyone can point their
So
finger
what
to.
are the
and
rest
say-
then? Just
Yeah.
The rest of
Operation
them
maintenance?
just says administration, auditor, bank fees, drainage, engineer, gate, road, insurance, Lee County property appraiser.
What do you have
legal.
in drainage?
yeah. What comprises of 156 in drainage?
Well, in these notes here,
Yeah.
that's what I'm breaking that 156 down for you.
Yeah, so I see what you did.
But when you
Oh, that's
go,
down here. 2
but when
times
you-
36.
Yes.
but
road
when you
trimming,
go
that's-
to the actual budget, it just says drainage. It doesn't say what that drainage number is supposed to pay for. So the only thing that this budget says what it's supposed to pay for is the engineer, the legal costs, and the swale mowing would be the only one that you would think that a vendor might look at and go, oh, I know what they budgeted for that, so I'm going to aim at that
Well,
number.
that's what my.
But the
that's-
drainage doesn't. Drainage doesn't.
Okay. Where are we going to put in cameras and streetlights?
That was
Is that under gate?
we put that under the when you made that note
Yeah.
earlier. It was put in miscellaneous.
Okay.
Now
Oh, okay. I see.
it could equally be under gate if you wanted it to be under gate. I could easily take that out of
I take
miscellaneous
the
for
monies
gate.
for the cameras. What we budget 4,000. I've read
Yeah, 4,500.
4,500. I'd put that under gate because that's the primary focus.
Yeah, that's,
And-
again,
and-
grouping it into
And
one.
at that level, you're probably by the time we get done with that, it's going to be a much higher number, just based on what the last expenditure was. It may almost reach the altitude
It was
of
like $8,000 the last
capital
time.
asset because
To
once we
do what
reach
cameras?
The cameras were like 8,000 the last.
once we reach 5,000, we are now a capital asset. So
Maybe we should do that. Put down 7,500, make it a capital asset.
well, yeah.
Because the gates are capital assets. They're brand new. Where they're
Yeah.
$11,000
Each.
Yeah. So
No, I take
Right
that
now we
back.
just have it.
That was for the fair.
both. Yeah.
Right now, we just have it as gates, and I'm gonna let Lisa handle that because I don't know how to take out what they have in for the old gates because we don't really have
Well,
way
if
to
we spent
itemize.
8,000 before on legitimate cameras, when was that? 3 years ago? How many years
no.
ago?
I don't know.
I saw it back in there, trying to remember how far back that was, about 3 years ago, 4
It
years ago.
was before I came on, way before I
Yeah,
came on.
it was,
Maybe
I-
Oh,
five
they're
years.
probably
I've got
cheaper
it.
now.
Yeah,
Cameras are
that's what I'm
cheaper now.
thinking. Cameras are better and cheaper today than what
Yeah.
they were
Yeah.
back then.
Yeah.
And the fact that they put cheap cameras in those expensive boxes.
I mean,
Yeah.
we've got the wiring in now, so you're not gonna be paying for the wiring. It's anyway, I was just saying,
Let's budget 7,500 then, please, not 4,500. And if we have to make it a capital budget, capital asset, we can.
well, you'll do that. You'll do that when we do the
So
purchase.
that'd be my recommendation. We'll talk about.
Yeah, the
board, I
last
think.
cameras were $8,249 in September of 2021.
But that's including wiring,
The
infrastructure,
year,
everything.
the budget year 2021.
20.
2021.
So they were
Budget
done
year.
in 20.
Well, September would have been the 2020, and the rest of the budget year would have been 21 back to September. So budget year 2021. That's
Begins
when the
October
cameras were
1,
done.
2020.
Well, I see under 19 to 20, I see 11,552 under that gate column.
Either way, that included wiring, bringing power
Sure.
there, everything, right?
Yeah, we don't need
have
to
a
We don't need to
foundation.
do that.
We don't
So
need to do all
if you
that.
put 7,500, that's
Should be more than
plenty.
sufficient.
So if I take that out of the miscellaneous,
And
because
put
you
it
had me
gate.
put it under as 4,500, I think.
Yeah, you were right on that 11,000. I was just doing that one set of cameras, Ring Innovation camera.
Okay.
And maybe I did not. Maybe I did put it under gate. Let me look at gate. I have 5,200 for gates. So yeah, I put 4,500 there for gates. Because if you look down below,
Can you make it 8,200 then at $3,000 more?
There's got to be some law, Mr. Kringle, that protects this water district against people who just maliciously tear up things. And if we have cameras and we identify the tag numbers and the driver, we ought to be able to have the sheriff's department go. do
Maybe we're gonna
something.
have to file a formal police
We-
report,
But,
blah, blah, blah.
but there's a law, whatever it is, that we need to put a sign up that just identifies when we say that we've got, that the cameras, when you drive through these gates, the driver's identified and the tag number of every vehicle is identified and recorded. And there ought to be a law that says any damage to a gate system or whatever will be prosecuted or whatever.
I mean, SunPass does it when you're going through the toll booth.
Yeah, they do.
And if you don't pay,
Well, you go through
ticket
these.
shows up.
You'll get a ticket in the mail.
Exactly.
This is true.
Really
When you
sure.
go through some of these other communities that have gates, they have up the signs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
And
heard.
they're private.
And they will send you a bill too. They'll charge the homeowner, whoever
Well-
you're visiting. I've had it happen.
Okay.
But they
to
have to
some-
be able. You have to
yeah.
be able to identify it.
Yeah, but they have cameras in the development. This was right off of the I forget the name of the street, Livingston, over there in Estero. When it turns into, I'm not sure the name,
Three
but there's a
Oaks.
Thank you. There's a development on the right, and when I was in there for business at one point in time, the young lady that I was talking to got a bill in the mail because the person who visited her put their license in to the slot and was speeding through the district, and they sent her a bill. And so she paid for it.
Okay, so let's go back to drainage because we didn't finish drainage. Are there any adjustments to the drainage amount that you want to make? You want to increase, decrease, change? The spraying is just a guess because we didn't do spraying this year, and in prior years we paid $3,000 to ABC Lawn Care for their spraying.
Yeah.
I don't know. So, are you happy with those prices? Those
I
Those
don't
rough
have any.
estimates?
I don't really have anything to base them on. So I'm
Yeah, we
thinking
don't
we
know the
added
reference point.
we added the 50,000 for culvert cleaning.
Yeah.
So I think we're probably going to be covered fairly well with that this year. So why don't we give it a try and see how it works
Okay.
out and start setting a benchmark for what we need to do.
Okay, so then the next column is roads. And again, I just put a number out there. For general road repairs of $15,600. No rhyme or reason or basis other than the fact that you might have some minor road repairs that need to be done.
What was the cost of 2021, 2022? It was 16,000. Was that fencing or something? What was
That was the
guy hit in
accident
Stillwell?
that on Stillwell, yes.
Yeah, I had to replace the guardrails. Okay.
But that shouldn't have been a budget item that was paid for.
Well,
by
no,
the
you have to
insurance
charge it to
I know.
the category, and then if you go back and look over here in other income for that year, you see where the insurance money came.
It should, I mean, I was just saying.
And then we
it does
also
wash.
replaced a couple other guardrails while we had the opportunity.
Okay.
So that can go down to 5,000 if you want, or we can leave it at the 15.
I
Thinking
think
that
it's
we
good.
might have to do
Leave it
some
at
corners.
15 because we might have another guardrail idiot scenario.
Well, that, okay, so the gate we talked about it, 7,500 for possibly new cambers, and then the other 700 is in case we want to go for that maintenance agreement or not for the gates once we hit the end of our warranty period.
You know, we keep talking about the maintenance agreement, and I spoke with the guy who installed the gates, and he says there's nothing to have a maintenance agreement on. So I don't I guess I'm having. He said you're paying for cleaning up the weeds around the outside. We don't do anything ever to the gates.
They don't oil.
No.
Then,
So-
then why would you want it then?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't see a point in that.
Yeah. Okay.
Uh,
So
it's-
maybe you choose not to do that.
I'll do the maintenance.
Well-
You give me the money, I'll do it.
Well, just remember, if we get any arms destroyed,
Yeah,
if
we're gonna.
anybody,
we still need to have
we'll
something.
have to have something just in case
But we can
somebody
cover.
destroys an arm.
Yeah. We can cover that under some of the other programs. Add
Okay.
more money into the cost of the roads. The gates don't have to be a separate item. We can transfer the money over,
Okay.
right? I mean, the gates are part of the road system
You do not need a separate category for gates.
or signs,
Correct.
being
They
stop
can-
signs or.
Well, we
road
don't
signs.
On
have
the
a
public budget
we
or
don't
work
ha-
notes, it's fine for us to
We don't
understand.
have a separate line item for signs. We do have a separate GL for gate.
Okay, so why don't we combine the gates and the roads and the signs together?
We don't have anything for signs. But
I'm saying let's put them together. Okay, it doesn't matter whether we have anything or not. Every time one gets knocked down, we pay to fix it. So somewhere
so
the
that's
money
why
comes.
that goes into the roads.
Okay,
That's part of the road budget.
that's what I just said. Let's put it all in one category under roads or whatever, which would cover the gates and the signs and the roads.
I can talk to Lisa over at Tuscan. You kept it separate so that you can isolate those expenses.
Oh,
and there's
I'm
depreciation
not
associated
saying,
with
I'm
that.
I'm not saying that we don't keep a line item account of what we're spending the money on. I'm just simply saying that the bucket it comes out of doesn't really matter.
Well,
Does
each of
it?
these line items, each of these categories are a GL.
Okay, then just leave them as they are.
Okay,
And
so we
add-
can go.
if
We
we
can
need to-
combine it if Lisa says it's not a problem. But I'm not sure how she'll handle the depreciation. But it may not matter. So I
I
mean,
think ultimately it may not matter in these broad categories because internally she'll depreciate the item.
She has
Yeah.
line items that build up to
Should
each of these
appreciate it.
categories, I'm sure.
well, I'm just saying he's talking about combining it. So
Yeah.
you want me to get rid of the category?
I was just talking more about grouping,
for
having-
budget purposes.
having for the budget purposes that in talking, we know that we need money for signs. We know we need money for the gates occasionally. We know we need money to fix roads occasionally. The unknown is we don't really know how many signs are going to get torn down this year. We don't know if the gates will ever get hit again. We don't know whether we're going to invest, how much money we're going to have to invest in the roads. So if it all comes under one category, we have to make it work for the year. And if it doesn't, then we've got to go to our reserves and transfer some funds over. But as far as the accounting principles go, we're going to keep line items on what signs cost us, what. That way we have an idea next year what we've spent in those areas.
Okay.
There's no historical data, like an average for like the years of a sign replacement.
She's taking these averages and come up with these numbers, right? Your forecast. We don't actually have real. I guess I've always been trying to figure out, is there a trend analysis we can do based on the activities that we have to do versus what we anticipate we might have to do, and then an emergency. That's how I would try to look at this budget. But you can't really do this without enough of these estimates. You know, what's it going to take to resurface? What's it going to take to... Now, I know we have some numbers for signs. Now we have numbers for
Well, we really don't
Gates
isolate.
repairs.
We don't really isolate. We don't isolate the signs as a separate subcategory.
No, I'm not saying separate category. I'm just talking about
Like that.
where your costs are going to go.
Right.
Well, that's what the roads are. Category for roads.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Yes.
I'm
So
just
you
trying
have
to
two
think. I'm
different
thinking on a
things.
zero-based budget.
Yeah.
Every dollar comes in should be allocated where it's going back out.
Right.
And if it
And
doesn't
that's what
go
you-
out because we didn't use it, it goes in reserves.
And that's what you're supposed to do as a government agency.
Exactly.
And so your total income, anticipated income, equals your total expenses plus your reserves. Those two categories together. The one item that regularly changes on you in the middle of the year that you have to do a resolution to approve is your cash carry forward number from last year. Is a hard number that changes your budget, and you have to address that. But the budget is a completely different tool and forecast than the actual revenue and expenditures that you receive. So the bills that you pay are what they are. This is simply a forecasting tool that you use to determine how much revenue you need to generate to cover all of your costs.
I have a question in relationship to that. Okay, we have a gate repair, but we have an annual amount of money over from September of 2021. What I have here goes through 23, and the question that I would have, when we have labor costs, a private contractor that does, say, our repair on the gates. Now, if I'm hiring gatekeepers, then they're coming in and they're doing parts and labor under one bill. If I'm doing a private contractor that we have working for us within the community, then is the price that's put down for them in the course of the entire year. In this case, it would be Larry Rose and Mike Bradford, and the amount of money in 2021 was $1,769. How many parts, how much of that was labor, and how much of it was parts? And to come up with $1,769 doesn't fit into their hourly rate.
What are you look? You're looking at the analysis. What we actually, the outflow.
No, I'm just trying to figure out that how much was parts and how much was labor.
Okay.
Now I know that you can go back to checks for labor and find out what the labor actually real cost was on that. But when I'm looking at it here on this sheet,
Yeah. Well, that sheet was only done for the benefit of John because he had wanted an idea of who the major vendors were in each category.
yeah.
I was
And
trying
what,
to get that so we have a better breakdown.
Right.
But by the same token, yeah, I agree with what you're saying. My question, it doesn't matter. The question still is, if you did this for John, and we have $1,769 for two people who were actually labor people, coming up with the last number being 9 doesn't come up into any categories of their labor billing rates. So that
some of that is reimbursement, mostly for. Larry had a little bit, not a whole lot. Are we talking last year or this year?
Oh, I don't care what year we're talking about. Let's talk hypothetical numbers.
Well, I'm trying to give you
what I'm
specifics because I can give you specifics on past history because I have that information. So if you're really interested in knowing what the parts and labor are, I can give you that. Because they would be 1099 on their labor and not on the parts.
Correct. That's what I was saying. I know you could separate that out, but for us to budget it, looking at something like that, which you're telling me this was just an information sheet for John, but if he was using it to help put together his budget, how would he know what should be parts and how would he know what should be labor if the information was given to him for that purpose? And when I've been looking at this, I've been wondering this personally, whether he did or not. I was wondering that. And it isn't about those particular two people. It's just about knowing whether we have hard costs, which were parts, or whether we have labor costs that are included. And then if we were talking about the gates and we sent a bill out, we did a phone call to gatekeepers, they're going to come in and submit a bill if we had, say we had one of the arms is broken off. Like I've been fixing this week, she's been fixing this week. But instead of us fixing it, we called gatekeepers, and they give us a bill for $500 to come do the very same thing that her and I have gone down and done in a few minutes.
Well, that's the Apex Access. Those are replacement arms.
I understand that.
But the arm's probably $200. The labor's $300.
Oh no! In those cases, those are just replacement arms. Because then Larry or
The new arms are put on with plastic nuts so that they're intended to break away. And so far, they've been doing exactly that. The question is, if they break away and they're laying there on the ground and there is no hard cost for parts, which there hasn't been other than buying the little plastic
or
nuts.
PVC pieces.
And instead of me fixing it, I call gatekeepers. They run over and they put it back on. But instead of Jim Bradford fixing it for nothing, gatekeepers charges us $300 or $500. You don't know what is parts and what is labor. They give you one bill for doing that job.
90% labor.
So all I'm trying to find out is that if Mike and Larry are doing this kind of thing, what is our hard cost versus our labor cost?
The hard costs are very nominal because.
Well, my understanding is they're getting $50 an hour.
Yeah, they are, but I know that Mike has bought nuts and bolts and that kind of thing occasionally. Nothing major.
But
and Larry hasn't bought anything. I paid for the wood from Home Depot for the fencing. So there is some parts in there, but it's not a significant percentage.
how do you know when they actually ordered a new post or not? I mean,
because I get the bill from
Okay.
municipal sign company.
okay.
He doesn't pay for that, and there's some mileage in there probably.
Okay.
Suffice it to say, if there's a $1,000 bill, probably 800 is labor and 200 is materials for these basic operation maintenance things are going on.
Even that's probably a little high, yeah. I mean, high on the cost side.
I was at a meeting back when Judy Tapley was still the chairperson, and it was voted on by the board that the labor rate was $25. Yet the labor rate is continued at $50.
All I know is it was at 50 when I came on in
And
August
there was
21.
there was a meeting January or February of one of the years, I believe, and it was voted on at that meeting that the labor rate would be the $25.
I don't know when it
So
changed.
I'm just wondering why we're still paying 50, and it seems like 50 is a high rate for,
Handyman?
Handyman.
well,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, what rate do you want?
well,
You can set the rate.
I'm thinking $25 is a fair rate. We can't do it tonight.
No.
No.
But you can give direction to add it to
but
the
you
agenda.
Can change it. You can change it at any time,
But
and then send it out to your persons that
But I
provide
think,
services.
I personally think that 25 is a fair rate. I don't know how many years that they were paying 50. I didn't even know it was 50. And it was brought up at a board meeting to be 25, and I voted for that, and the 3 members of the board voted for it. So I just was wondering why it was
Still
50. All of a
50.
sudden I'm seeing it one day not too too long ago, and I see that it's at 50 an hour, and I'm like, wow, I'll take that job. I mean, I spend a lot of time working for this district, and
Sure. Just resign from the board and go to work for the district.
that's what I'm
There you
thinking.
go.
So,
And see if I can find out.
Well, and if there is a question in the future at a board meeting, you can take official action. Again, it would be duplication, but if you don't have any record of it happening before, you just take the action again to say, from now on, it's going to be $25 an hour, and then that will resolve it for the record. And,
I mean,
and that's what everything has to
in
go
all
back
fairness,
to the
what
record.
do the other people here think of the rate? Is
$50
50?
an hour.
$50 an hour for handyman work,
Yeah.
I think
no.
is pretty high. You know, good framer gets 25, 30 bucks an hour. Good finished carpenters, 35, 40 bucks an hour. None of the skills, sorry
Require
against
that.
Larry or your brother, are doing this. Fixing the signs, changing bolts, digging the post hole, change a split rail.
And also, just for kicks and giggles, when I go to the gate, if we pay somebody $25 a handyman to do it, or $50 an hour, they're not going to divide that up. They're going to say, "Well, I get the hour because I took in the."
I was there for 40 minutes, but I'm charging
Yeah,
you an hour.
and I got news for you. I've been taking care of that gate. I'm doing it just fine. It doesn't take
And doesn't take you an
that
hour.
much. It doesn't take an hour.
Well, I did it the other day, and
Yeah.
it was like 15 minutes. From
Right.
the time I left my house,
Right.
I took my, I believe it was 7/16 wrench with me. I know what
Right.
the nuts are. I took the nuts with me. And matter of fact, we talked about it because of the number of times it's knocked down, and putting a wrench there with the bolts inside the box, and all we got to do is open it, get them. It doesn't. So if I'm driving by in my car,
Yeah, you
and I
just
have
fix it right then
I
and
can
there.
fix it.
That's a good idea, actually.
Very good idea.
And I hope it doesn't continue like that. And we're talking about changing, you're grinning at me, but changing the timing on it a little bit. And maybe we need to slow it down. Maybe
Just a little.
it's
It does drop
It's
pretty
so
quickly.
fast. It's
I will
almost hit my
say-
car twice.
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah, I will say,
just
I
gotta
gave
be
you the
adjusted.
manuals. Let's go reset the timer on.
Yes,
Just a smidge longer.
I've
Well,
requested. and
the
will-
issues were
I get
that,
the point.
that they were doing two cars.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, people were like, "Ooh." There's a couple times I'm coming
I
down
think some people have
Cockershaw,
learned though.
and I'm about to turn
They're
left,
like
and I see
waiting,
a
like-
car sitting there on the side, just waiting.
Yeah.
So then I sat there and waited.
Yeah. Whose
And then
move
they
is it?
sat there. It must have been 2-3 minutes.
Uh-huh.
Eventually, the car kind of turned left, went down, and the guy gave me like a dirty look.
Yeah.
Then it was about halfway down Cockershaw. Then I turned, opened the gate, and went in. I figured, I'm not going to let you come in. You're just
Right.
waiting for somebody.
Yeah.
We were
I
going
did that
to
with
take
Pike.
and tie some fishing line to the poles and put leads on them so that when they do that, they'll get the windshield
Crack their
broken.
windshield.
Oh, geez.
That would work. The reputation would get
Here's
out.
a question on engineering as a budget. We've got about 100,000. Are we basing that on a lot of the hours that Ron's team has been spending with FEMA meetings and everything else? Because I don't know if we need to add another line item in there, another row of his costs for the surveying he says he wants to do, which has got to be done if we're going to do a water plan. We're going to have to survey, because the last water plan was 2005.
It needs to be done.
So it's going to have to be done, and typical surveying crew is probably $150 an hour with the equipment and everything. And if you do 8 hours a day,
In answer to your question,
you got to do all the streets.
Yeah.
So how many streets do we have? 15 north,
15 on the left and 6 on
6
the
on the
right.
right. So you have 21 streets, and strike is 22. So 22 streets. I bet you at least 5 days of surveying. It's probably going to be a $20,000 surveying fee or more. I want to see what Ron comes up and what his estimate is.
Okay, so
in answer to your question, you do not, for this budget purpose, you do not need a separate category.
No, I want to put it
for
in.
that.
So I'm just here's my question. If Ron gets back to us by Friday, this week, because I just sent him an email while we're waiting to say, Ron, what is the estimate of your surveying for all the canals for the water flow? Do you have an estimate? And if not, you'll call him tomorrow. I'll call him. Say, hey, give me a number. What do you
You
think?
can call him if you
I'll
want.
call him. Yeah, I'll call him. Say, what is it, Ron? $20,000, $10,000. You're gonna take 5 days. Get a crew down here. Who's doing it? Now, if he subs it out, see, I don't know if he surveys in house anymore.
He's a small firm.
Yeah, he might sub it out, which is going to add a cost.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well, do you want to put that in this number?
I want to put it in 100,000, whatever his number is.
Okay.
We could do that before the meeting,
Yes.
or at the meeting. Say we've got the estimates now. You need
Yeah,
to put
you
that
can
in.
change. You
Okay.
can change it anytime.
Okay.
So his number, I started at 80,000, and then I added 24,000 because of all the projects. I added extra engineering costs, anticipating that if all those projects came to pass, that he's going to be heavily involved in whatever those projects are, and so I added extra labor for those projects, not for the survey.
Now, one of the things is that a certain amount of that, no different than Mr. Pringle's bills,
Right.
were supposed to be FEMA paid. And now FEMA won't pay everything, but that every time he goes to a FEMA meeting, he should be billing us, even though we're paying him, it should be marked FEMA.
It is.
So we know, okay,
It is.
because that we can expect back. So when we talk about an actual budget for him, do we budget the total amount, or do we subtract out what FEMA will pay?
Oh, you
I'm
budget the
budgeting-
total amount because it is an expense for engineering
Actually,
services.
ongoing expense. There's no
Yes.
guarantee.
So that's
FEMA's gonna-
right. So that's, and then
Yeah.
on the revenue side, if you anticipate receiving back 25, 30, 35% of that total engineering number as a FEMA reimbursement, then that would go on the
But
revenue.
in talking to Lisa, we can't do that yet because
If you give us
when we don't know
percentage
that
idea
and we
if we
can't
do
do that too
reimburse
far in
us.
Oh, yeah.
advance.
That's
75%.
true. And so
I
that
can't
has
really
to,
put it in
Okay.
the budget.
It'll,
no,
it's
but it'll,
100%
so
of the
what
projects we
happens
have
is
in
when you get
place
the check
now.
from FEMA,
Then we
then
put
you
it in.
amend the
Including his
budget
time,
because
Right.
you're
Including
increasing
his
your
time,
total
but
revenue
they do
number.
have a total
You have
amount
to
of
do a
time they
resolution
pay.
to
Right.
amend the
And
budget
just
to
before
increase
Dale
that
left,
revenue
Right.
source.
told me and Ron, you got to start watching Ron's time.
And
So we're getting
then
to the threshold.
if
of
it does not
Ron's
also increase
Okay.
your engineering fee, then you increase
Yeah.
another line.
No,
the reserve.
I knew that, but
Yeah. Yep.
in answer to Jim's question, no, I can't do that.
So then, actually, what Jim just said makes sense. If we're getting close to the threshold of what FEMA may reimburse on Ron's time, then we probably need that extra 24,000 because we may eventually be paying some of his time for FEMA out of our own pocket.
Yep.
So let's say Ron's got $50,000 in total FEMA time, and FEMA says we're allocating 40. Here's your 40. We're going to get stuck with the other 10 from Ron.
Now, the other thing he's billing for right now is governmental coordination with the city of Bonita Springs and other things for the mitigation and for these other interlocal agreement kind of communities. So he's billing those meetings. So, that was kind of just again, not knowing how much it might be. I wanted to be sure that we had extra over and above our normal. Because he's
What
not,
did Morris
Yeah.
average?
Now that we're sitting here in a smaller
50,
meeting,
50,
Yeah.
60, 50.
the issues with the front of the subdivision, the city of Bonita has tentatively, not officially, agreed to pay us the taxes back for the 22 lots at the front every year. The city has agreed, but not until we complete that interlocal agreement with them, to pay for maintaining the Stillwell Canal section of our, which is a good mile of our 5 miles. And if Bonita covers down there, that's a mile at that end they're covering. And then a mile up here, it leaves us with a little over 3 miles that we're covering. So that should give us a fair share of maintenance, but the city has agreed to, the city of Bonita has said, but Everything we do has got to be in that interlocal agreement, and it's got to be fixed in there, including protecting strike lane. We can put it in there. Anything we want, we can put in there now. And if they want that tap coming into our system, they can't put it in without asking us.
Do we
And
need?
they're digging a pretty good sized hole over there right now.
Yeah. Do we need to also put in that agreement, interlocal agreement, that just because you're maintaining a mile here, a mile there, doesn't give you the hook to eventually open up strike lane?
No, what's going into the interlocal agreement is that they cannot open it.
Okay.
That was one of the provisions.
Okay, good.
Okay, so knowing that I did not include anything for the engineering costs for the survey, we should ask Ron how much additional costs above the surveying costs will need to be included or added to the survey costs for his supervision, right?
Well, let's assume you're right, he's small, and he's going to sub it out, which wouldn't surprise me. Then how much, and the guys who subbed out to, they're going to want their pound of flesh. Then how much is he going to want to review their work?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I've got notes from when we talked with them before.
And
Yeah, I know, I understand.
so are we, knowing that we can't even consider the cost of a water control plan, are we going to want to build into next year's budget the cost of a formal water control plan creation, or are we going to want to push that to 2025, knowing that we're already years behind when we should have had one?
Richard, what are some of the essentials, skill sets that would be required to make the water control plan? Is it some legal that has to go to approval from Tallahassee? Is there a certain amount of engineering work that says your control plan for the next 10 years says the water will, if you do this to your canals, the water will flow like this, so it's more engineering costs? Or is it just almost a lot of wordsmithing with some engineering? Because I read the 2005 had a lot of engineering, but I don't know who has to approve that. Just the board?
You.
So it's just us.
Yes, sir.
So
gets
it's really
filed with others, but it is your water control plan that you adopt at the board level.
But no one outside of our district has to review it, as it may impact South Florida Water District.
Yes, sir. They can review it. They have that ability, and I forget where all we circulate it to.
Yeah, because we have to show it to some people, right?
Yes, sir. But it is your plan, your water control plan for your district, and it's primarily based upon engineering best management practices. I mean, that's really what it gets down to. So the engineer, to a great extent, it's engineering information, but also the capital improvements element. You know, there should be some discussion, I believe, in there of the capital improvements that you have, their condition, their replacement, in the future, so that you have that as well. That's all related to water control.
But I would think we're actually indirectly, Jim, do you think we're actually indirectly already working on a water control plan unofficially by FEMA saying they're going to change the weirs, they're going to put gates in? If Ron surveys the water flow, these are components that go into eventually a plan. So we're actually working on the plan now. We just haven't.
He needs to
Said it's
officially put it together.
formalized.
It hasn't been formalized.
And he said earlier in the year, the MS4 permit
Right.
is a 5-year cycle,
Right.
and
And we're coming out of year
every
5.
year you're modifying or creating some aspect of the plan. But again, it's bringing all that work together into
And I
one
think we're in
document.
year 5 of that now, aren't we?
Yes,
Yeah.
Yeah. So next year we kick off year 1 again.
basically, yes.
this year, well,
I think he
the
said it
last
was
one
year
was,
four.
the last one was year 4, which was filed in November of 22.
So then this
This year's
October is year 5.
Yeah.
So we actually have a year to get a formalization of the water control plan.
So that's why the question is, do we build it into this
But I think
budget
we're already
year?
building it in based on if we get a number from Ron for surveying, we're already building in infrastructure, capital improvements on the weirs, which would be part of that plan.
So it'd be his time in creating,
Yeah.
and formalizing, and writing the plan. His hours doing that.
So I think the only number is going to change is if he comes up and says, yeah, I'm going to probably need $20,000 of engineering and surveying costs, or 30,000, whatever. That number will change. Other than that, you've already put a buffer in there. I think that number's okay now, pending whatever Ron comes up with for.
And I know we have some other buffers when we get over to the revenue side.
Because
So-
even if he's doing engineering work for these FEMA projects, that engineering work goes as part of the water plan.
Some of it.
So,
We're one district, no matter where the money comes from.
yeah.
Okay, so for legal,
I heard the lawyer's cutting it 20%. He's giving the pro bono.
I was gonna
I
say half,
added, again, knowing that he would probably be involved in
He's
some
losing
of the
hair.
contracts, I added a little bit for that. So I've got his amount at about 52,000. I asked him if he felt that was realistic, and he said just depends on what all happens in the course of the year.
Oh my God, what a lawyer answer.
It, it,
Did I answer that correctly?
you answered it accurately. You did answer it accurately.
So I just there it is. All right, so now let's go to administration. Administration's a little different than the last one you saw.
That's the two of you, right?
Yep,
Yep.
and
And our little fees.
yep. And
And-
so I'm putting in the administration budget 36,000 for the secretary treasurer. And the reason why I'm putting that amount in is because when I talked with Jennifer before, I told her I wanted $25 an hour for the position. And I estimated that the position would take 80 hours a month. I'm averaging since March 120, well, actually more like 118 hours. But if you figure 120 hours a month is what the average, that comes up to times 25 to 36,000. I propose, because we've always treated it as just a job and a position, as opposed to keeping track of hours. And with the new policy and procedures, you have us tracking our hours. So now we have a better sense of what we're actually spending time-wise on it. If the board was not comfortable with that number, I'm happy with going with like a rolling average of every quarter, for every 3 months, doing a rolling average. If you felt that you didn't want to pay for 120 hours because you thought, well, maybe it's not going to be 20 hours every month. Maybe some months it'll be 80 hours. Maybe some months 100 hours. So my main concern is that I get paid $25 an hour. So to make it easy,
But you want the budget at 36,000, but
Figuring-
you may earn
less.
15,000 in the first 4 months and 5,000 the next 2 months because you're just not putting the hours in.
Well, I figured it was
But-
easier doing a rolling average of every 3 months, but that was just a
Okay.
thought. I also increased the managers from 38,000 to 42 because at the time last year we had budgeted 48 because she was new. You all brought her in at 38, and she'll have been in the position for about 6 months. So I thought you might be wanting to take her a little bit more to the level that you originally were planning on paying her. And then I just have your supervisor expenses and then the related tax bills. Now, I asked you.
One second. Did we or did we not go and decide there are certain duties and responsibilities Secretary Treasurer was doing, manager would do, and some stuff manager would. And did we finalize that and formalize that? So we have. Okay. So does that still equate to 120 hours of work and your 80 hours of work, or what? Have we figured that out? Got enough time in the job to?
Well, I know I've been keeping track of the hours and submitting them. However, I didn't think I was going to get this pop quiz question from you. So I couldn't tell you what my average is right now. I'm sorry, my friend.
It's okay.
I mean, I can,
So the answer is yes, sir. There's a track record.
There is a track record. I'd have to
Yeah.
go back and look at it.
I don't have
There's
I don't
not
have
in
your
front of me
August
right now.
month, your August time.
Well, we're in
I have your,
August.
yeah, I know, I know.
Yeah.
So I say I don't have your August. Your June time was a little bit less because you were still relatively new. So that was about 40 hours. But you're doing a lot more now than you were back then. July, I think you were closer to 80 hours.
Okay.
Um,
I know why you gave me that phone. Let's just put it that way.
You're talking about 80 hours for the month.
For the month.
Yeah.
20 hours a week.
yeah. I'm averaging,
And
A
you're
lot more
saying
than
you're
that.
averaging 30 hours a week.
yeah, I am. Some not all weeks. The first week of the month is not as much. Later in the month it gets more. As
So
we start-
sometimes you
as we
might be
start-
putting 50 hours, and somewhere else you're putting in 15.
Yeah. As we get to start collecting and tracking the CIP phase 2, that's going to be more time. I mean, there's going to be time with that.
So what happens after next year CIP goes away?
Well, that's going to be a 2-year process.
Okay.
I'm happy.
I'm just asking because
yeah.
I'm trying to think.
I'm happy with a rolling average of 3 months and recalculating every 3 months based on rolling. But then the supervisor who is going, well, geez, is she padding her hours? I don't know. And if you're thinking that way,
No, I'm
then-
not
then-
thinking that way. I'm trying to think.
then I
we're
shouldn't be in a
capping-
position at all.
No, if we can't trust you, then we can't trust you. That's a problem.
Yeah.
But you're proposing the budget a ceiling of 36,
Yes.
a ceiling of 42.
Yes.
I'm going to change that. I don't think we should put, I think we should put the administrative cost there of a total of both amounts, and we determine as the board when and if we give money. It shouldn't be written here that anybody's getting any set amount. That's no different than the other services that we contract with. So if the board if the money's put into the budget and the board says in September, October, whenever that any of these numbers go into effect or not, then at that point the money's there to do it. But I don't think we should predetermine that that's the amounts that are being given to either party.
Well, you're going to make that decision at the September meeting. You're going to
No, we're gonna vote on.
No.
the-
What I'm saying is, in the September meeting, as part of the September meeting, you define the persons doing the jobs, and then you announce. You usually determine the salaries at that meeting.
You don't have to, but you can.
Yeah, but again, I'm saying historically that's what you've done. So you can always change what you've done historically. So I mean, however you want to do it. If you don't want to, you don't have to say work by position. You can have a total. It doesn't matter to me. I'm just telling you.
I'm looking more at what are the responsibilities regardless of who's doing it. So if we have a budget of $80,000, that's the cap to get these results. Budget, tracking, work with the tax, work with the engineering firm. These are activities. It's really activity-based costing. Here's the activities. Here's the costs. Here's the budget number comes off those costs. What I don't want to do is be in a position where you guys are saying, "My God, we're putting so many hours in. We budget $80,000, and now we have $90,000 of hours."
No, I'm not.
I don't want to be in that position.
No,
But what happens
because I don't
if
have
you
the
don't?
time to do that.
What happens if you don't put as many hours in, and
Do we get credit?
just
Well, that's why I say the rolling average is an easy way to do
And
that.
are
Or-
these paid vacations? I mean, you're now
No,
saying you're
no,
now
there are
saying,
no paid vacations
Okay,
because you're not full time.
well, I'm just asking. You put in X amount of dollars per year, so to me that's a paid vacation because if you're not here, you're still getting the money. If you're working by the hour and you're not here, you don't get the money. So,
But you're gonna put in the hours when you get back or before you go to do it. So it's not, you're not getting a wage on an hourly. In other words, you're not getting a weekly wage
I
based
worked
on the
salary
work.
for a lot of years, and I do understand that some weeks
Yeah.
I can put in a lot of hours, and sometimes I put in 3 times the hours that I even got paid for.
Yeah.
But I also understand the other side of that.
So anyway, you can change those numbers if you like. I talked to you about the supervisor salary.
We
And-
probably need to finish discussing that, otherwise it's going to be left open for the in the
Yeah,
in
we
the
don't want to
meeting.
discuss
So
this.
I'm going to make a suggestion that we lump sum the money into a category that we can determine when and if we choose to do so.
Well, we have it lumped summed into a category. It's called
It's
administration.
administration.
It's 85,000.
No, we've got it set as to what it will be. We might decide that it's 34. We might decide that it's 38. For her,
You can. I was just creating numbers.
and that's why I said if they're put into one category for
And you
administrative.
do. You have that
costs.
up at the top. It's 85,767.
So here's what I suggest. Administration budget for secretary, manager, and supervisors. What is the number? 80?
85,767.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
And don't break it out, even in the notes. Okay? And then
Well, when you go to do the budget, you're not going to have. It's not going to be this way. Again, the budget is that other piece of paper I was just showing you. It's just a line item.
Okay.
It's not broken out. There's no break.
So this is for our FYI.
This was for
Yeah.
discussion purposes, so that you would see where the numbers.
So
were
how
coming
you
from.
derived your numbers was by, guesstimating.
You
and
took the 85,
approximate.
you broke it down
Yeah.
3 categories.
Okay.
I understand.
Now, statute, Florida statute. Mr. Greenwell.
I'm on this.
Does it not say $50 per meeting or per day for supervisor wages?
Under 298,
Mm-hmm.
I think it says that the board, and that has to be on the annual meeting agenda, by the way.
Right.
The board has to set the rate.
Yeah,
for
I think the
meeting
board can set the
attendance.
rate.
Well,
And
the
there's a
landowners
maximum.
vote
Yes.
on it.
I'm sorry, I said the board, the landowners. It has to be at the landowners
Okay,
meeting.
the landowners vote on what? The rate that the board gets?
Yes, sir.
I mean, I've spoken to another
Mrs. Smith
water.
brought it up the last time and she was told that it was set by the Florida statutes. Now, which way is that?
No,
No, they have to vote. They have to vote.
right.
And
The
but
Florida
the,
law gives I think the Florida law gives a cap.
but I know of a water control district that's paying their supervisors $100 every meeting. But I thought that the statute said that it was per day that the supervisor works on behalf of the district.
Well, if that's the case, between Jim's days, my days,
Well, I know,
Jennifer's days.
but at the last landowners
but there's
meeting,
another $50,000 in
but
there.
at the last
My
landowners meeting, the landowners voted $50 per meeting. So I'm trying to.
Well, that I
open-
remember.
Yeah,
I was
I'm
just-
trying to open that up to what the statute says. Do we have more flexibility to drive the supervisor's salary than where that we've always been?
My recollection, and I don't have it in front of me.
Well,
I'm
he's looking it up right now.
Okay, going back to the administrative costs.
Yep.
I think I'm looking at the budget, and it looks to me like $64,513. Where'd I go wrong?
$64,513 is what I project that we will have paid this year for administration.
Why does it say 23, 24 on it? Oh, I
Down the
take that
bottom.
back. I was looking on the line above. My apologies. Okay.
It's
And
on
the reason why it's that much
298.14.
less,
298.14.
Jim, than it should have been or would have been is because Audrey was not hired until April.
I
Had-
understand.
Okay.
I was looking to see where the projected cost was for the upcoming year, and I must be looking at the wrong paper.
No, you're looking at if you go right to the bottom right there, it's right
Yep.
there.
Yep, on the bottom.
Go down the
I'll
page.
show you. Hold on. I'm getting old.
You see that one in them, and then
I've got that there.
and then go,
Where's the projected for administrative
Per day.
costs?
go to the other page.
Yeah, I don't think that's.
What are you looking at?
It's $50 per day. For the
says it
time
right there.
actually engaged.
Is that
Right there. So then this was 20. What was paid? This is what's projected.
Did I
Okay.
read that wrong, John?
Unless the
No, I'm
landowners
reading
at the
it.
annual meeting determined to pay a compensation which
It
in
shall
no
not
event
exceed
will
$50 per
exceed
day.
$50 a day for the time actually engaged in work for the district and in attending sessions of the board.
But that's per day? I'm asking,
Actually, for the
$50
time
per
actually
day.
engaged in
Plus
work.
expenses.
can I
for the
then
district.
go back?
No, because the landowners at the last annual meeting
Approved
voted
$50
$50 per meeting, and I think at the meeting I even said something to you, and you were like, "I don't think so," and so I thought, well, maybe I read it wrong. So I think there's an opportunity and really an obligation for the landowners to pay you what you're due for the work that you're doing. Now, again, I don't know if you're going to want to have a cap on it or something, but
I'll tell you
I
what,
think there's an
I don't want to do a
opportunity.
vote, though, that violates something in 298.
No, I mean if it says
Well, no. And my recollection was that was for meeting activities. But it says time actually engaged in work for the district and in attending sessions of the board.
Yeah, that end is that conjunction of end is what throws
the
me off.
question I'm asking, I've spent a lot of hours, but if I only got $50 per meeting I've attended over the past year since the hurricane,
We owe you a lot of
nobody
money.
anticipated the hurricane.
We owe you a lot of money.
Well, it really still wouldn't amount to that much.
No, I understand.
But it would
no,
compensate
I
me
think
for.
I think you all are entitled to,
Yeah.
or
I mean, I
should
wish-
be. And if we're going forward thinking that you're going to be dealing with a lot more contracts and going up to Tallahassee and doing these other things, then we need to. I think we need to think about.
We could budget it, but if 298 is being specific in this clause, then how are we going to get around that?
Well,
Well, that is what it says.
nobody's trying to get around it. We're just trying to comply
Apply
with
it. We're trying to apply it, and
comply with it.
we have to. We're trying to apply it.
Well, then
To-
if we
to
apply
your
it in the
current
new
work.
fiscal year,
Yes.
then really a meeting at FEMA for 3 hours is $50.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a bunch of those days in for
Oh,
this
yeah.
past year.
But we also have to have the landowners vote on that and approve it, correct? So we have to put the motion out on the floor for the landowners in such a way that it gets approved.
All they gotta do is put it out there that all meetings that the board members attend.
Well, I think
Yeah,
we
it's
want to use the
$50.
word verbiage out of the
says here.
298.
298.
Use the 298 language.
Landowners at the annual meeting determined to pay compensation with no event may exceed $50 per day for the time actually engaged in work for the district and in attending sessions on the board. Going to FEMA meetings is engaged in work for the district.
Yep.
Doing the emails and setting all that stuff up. Mm-hmm. It's a long time.
Yeah. The website.
Yeah, it amounts
The website,
to
yeah.
about $5 an hour, doesn't it?
If that.
Well, it's not a huge amount of money, but it's something more than what you've had in the past.
Yeah.
And I think you're entitled to it.
I'm with her on that.
Oh, thank you. But, I mean, I haven't even put in for mileage or fuel because
No.
I just didn't care that much to
Right.
track it.
If you want to put in a line item there, dumped in there another $5,000 for the budget, and if the landowners approve it, it's approved. And if not, it's an extra $5,000 that we allocate somewhere
I mean,
else.
it's pennies per landowner.
Yeah, it's not.
Okay. All right. I only wanted to bring it up because I felt that.
Well, you read that differently than me.
No, put it in administration.
Yeah, that's where I put
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
So I'm changing administration from 85 to 90,000.
It's fine.
And then what you all would have to do if it gets voted in at the landowners meeting is
Track
you'll
our
have
time.
to track it and submit to me before the end of the month your days worked, so that could be and I would label the day, the meeting, or the business conducted, and so forth. I don't know
If you really think about it,
if you have to define. I don't know how much of a definition business work. Any day business was done on behalf of the district. If
but
there's a
Chris, if
definition
you
of
really
that.
think about it, the three of us have to sit here and read stuff to come to the meetings prepared because you can't really do it in the meeting in front of landowners. So it might be 2 hours here, 3 hours there. We're going to put a day or two in of our time
And I think
minimum
you should.
for a meeting, plus the time at the meeting. Am I right or not?
You're right.
No, you're right.
I think you should. Okay, next line item. Auditor, that's by contract, so
Yep.
it's no big deal. The property appraiser, that is, they have a rate. I don't know what it is. They charge it. This looks like it was 1% of the budget, but I'm just guessing. So
Is
That's-
the same appraiser comes around for Lee County and does theirs? Or is it?
They just
So-
say it's the Lee County
Property
property
appraiser.
appraiser. And
So-
Are
that's
they double
right.
dipping
And-
though? Because they're charging us,
Yeah.
I'm sure, in our
Taxes,
regular
yeah.
taxes for this person to do the appraisal, and then we're getting charged extra because we're the district.
Well, they're gonna do
They
that.
get charged.
They charge every government agency.
Every government
Okay.
agency does.
Yeah.
They do the same thing.
The question that you could ask them, do they charge the district? The question you could ask them is whether they might not charge the district because you do not collect any ad valorem tax revenue, only assess non-ad valorem assessments, and your non-ad valorem assessments are not based upon any valuation of any land. The argument would be that they are not providing any services for you.
They do provide some services in that they handle the tax. They provide us with the information.
To do your tax roll,
Yeah,
what the parcel ID number?
yeah, and whatever that is, and
Well, then that would be the basis for their charge.
Okay.
it's a one. They used to charge quarterly. Now they charge annually.
And how much?
67, 60.
Last year it was 5,957, so I just increased it to 6,760. An incremental amount.
So
Well,
that's
it
not
wasn't
connected.
quite wasn't 1%. And I remember getting an email saying something about $1.84 or something per tax
Parcel.
Yeah, something like that.
Charge everybody.
The insurance, we really haven't seen much any increases in prior years. It was $3,107.75 a quarter for the last 2 years. And then there was an extra charge this year with the bond. So I wasn't sure if they were going to increase it next year. I
It's
just
just
added a
general
little.
liability
Yeah,
insurance.
yeah. I just added a little bit for basically the COLA cost.
Are we allowed to put any of our capital assets in on the insurance plan? See
Um,
what the premium would be? Like the gate? If it's $500 a year to add it to our insurance policy for a brand new $11,000 gate,
I could.
even if it's $2,500 deductible, we still get $7,500 back in case the thing gets destroyed again. I'm just thinking out loud.
Yeah, no, we haven't in the past. I can find out what it would cost.
Just
I
curious
think in
what the
past it
premium
was-
cost would be.
Yeah, I can go out there and ask them.
What do you think of that?
Well, you should include in the cameras then if you're gonna do
Yeah,
that.
yeah, exactly. If we get the cameras, then we'll do all that because then we'll have more value there.
Okay.
But they include like signage and fencing and things like that.
capital assets over.
Capital
By
assets.
the time
But
you
the only
by the
capital
time you
assets
get
we have
done,
are the
we're gonna be
gates.
Paying so
Yeah,
much more
gotcha.
for insurance than the actual items
Items,
cost
right.
us.
Yeah, it could
You know,
be.
There's a point when,
The demarcation line, I gotta
Yeah.
say stop. Okay.
All right, I can pose that question. All right, so miscellaneous. That's the big bucket. That's the cost of the gate remotes, software expenses, website hosting, email expense, phone. I'm still not getting a bill for your. Is your phone your $30 your phone
no,
on your
I'm,
chart PC chart?
I'm using my own phone. I get everything transferred
Okay.
right over.
Okay, so you didn't get a separate district phone.
No,
then?
ma'am.
Okay.
I looked into it. It was very expensive.
All right, so that is $360 we could take off of this projection because that's included. Let me see what I put for the manual meeting place. I only had $275.
you were talking about on the miscellaneous on the $300 and some dollars.
Yeah, hold on.
I'd suggest we leave it there.
Yeah, just
We
leave
don't-
it in there.
We don't know what the future brings in that
Yeah, hold
area.
on. I want to change now that we know what the meeting room's going to be. Let me change that because that's added. That's another. I only had $175 for that. Let's see what that does to us.
So it's gonna be 250 when we have our meetings here.
Right.
Correct.
And at this point, we're just gonna keep the meetings
But
here.
it's not per meeting, like right now we're here,
Yeah, we're not
Yeah.
gonna get charged.
we're not getting charged for that. So anytime we have a meeting or something and we need to have access. But they're not charging us, just remember, they're not charging us for the use of the building. They're charging us for the lights.
And the
air
guy
conditioning.
sitting up there working the machine, yeah.
So you want me to leave her phone on?
Yeah.
Okay, so that takes it. All right, I had that takes it to 23,940 in terms of the estimate, and I had projected 24,265 because I had a cushion in there with the COLA increase. So I don't need to change that number necessarily. I have 25,480 there.
25,480. It's going to stay.
Yeah, I don't know what 24. I added $980. What was that $980 for? I don't know. We've got $4,400 for travel for the two people, website hosting, software, meeting room, internship, FPL, email service, Department of Economic Opportunity. 4,264. Why did I add 980? No, I added 1,000. So do you all want to increase that, decrease that? Do you have any comments about that you would like to discuss? Any questions?
So right now I have 603,647 of expenses.
600, how much? 606?
603, 647, but I didn't do any of these increases.
I have 606, 647.
So that probably is the room. What's that number?
603, 647 is right here.
Yeah, but
That's what it was.
that's what it was.
You
but-
adjusted it up a grand whopping total of $3,000.
Oh, wait a minute. What
Right.
happened? Why didn't my 5,000 stick? 9,000 minus 907.67.
Where is that?
All right, it's under the budget workshop. Where are you?
Yeah, I couldn't find the detail.
I can't find it.
Let me see. Help you.
If you look on the front sheet, no, no.
Nope.
What is he looking
Keep
at?
going on the next page where it says.
603, 647.
Yep, and
That
that's
was
But
the
on the-
original.
But the very front page, you got a suggested budget 683, 585. Or is that the income? That's the income.
All right, so we added 5,000 for administration. We did not increase. We added some money for the gate. So now I have 611,647 for the total GM expenses, which would put our assessment at 642,48, 486.
611,647, and you're showing we're going to have revenue of 683, 585.
Well, not after those costs. Now my revenue is
No, this is gross before you take out
yeah.
683, 585 less 611, 647. What's this number here? This is the income.
Right. So what that is, what that income is the use of connection. All right. So let's go to the income because we haven't talked about the income side.
Yeah, that's the other page that you're on.
Go to the income page.
The two that are together. This one with this. You're there.
Yeah.
683 right there.
Okay. So
You're on the
again,
wrong page.
like with CIP Phase 1, we have
Where's the
interest
other
in.
page at? 'Cause
Yeah, we have other income. It may or may not come.
Right.
have
We
bank
got use of
investments, so-
connection permits. I estimated 6,000.
So what number can we guarantee that we know we should expect on gross
That's what I'm asking.
income? 643,083, and some amount for permits. You're saying 6,000. We don't know how many permits.
Right.
So depending on
Shouldn't
building,
be,
maybe
yeah.
no one's going to put any more permits in, right?
Anything over here.
They may not.
So
But,
the only number is known is
I can't find
634,83.
that, but-
if you
Is
have
that it?
expenses totaling 611,
Why didn't you
647,
start with-
then the assessment will be 642, 486. That's what you have to assess all the landowners, because from that you're going to reduce the commissions and the discounts, because you want your net to equal the 611, 647.
Right.
So that would put the assessment for this year at $590.04 an acre, or $737.55 for an acre and a quarter.
Would you say we have to assess 664?
642, 486. Because from that you would reduce the commissions and the discounts that Lee County's going to collect to net the 611, 647.
I understand the commission discounts. I understand the gross. 634.83. That's the budget gross.
You can't use that because
Well, I'm just reading the numbers here.
I know but we've changed the
We
numbers.
just made
so
changes, so
as
it's
you,
going to alter that as well.
So as you make the changes, now this is with everything. So forgive me.
Yeah, it's
As
not
you make
over
the changes, it takes the total to 611, 647. So we have to calculate, and if we go down here, we divide it by the acreage. And I'm going to see what this does here.
845 divided.
Yeah,
Why did you divide by 95.2%?
because I do 3.8% to come up with these two numbers. This number right here. So it's 4.8 is what we're paying for the commission and the discounts. We estimate the discounts because not everybody's going to pay in November. And so we use 3.8 instead of 4, and then we have a 1% commission. So you want this number here to be matching the number you have
course,
to
yeah.
have. So that just does all
So
the
you
math.
back into the gross it has to budget. I
Right.
got it.
Now, the one thing that I did increase this because of where we are with prime and the interest rates. we're looking at our bank interest based on the current balances for next year at being about $49,188. And we always use that as buffer and cushion.
That bank interest is based on
What's that, Florida?
the operating
Our reserves.
reserves from the operating,
Right.
not from the
Not
bond.
from CIP.
Okay.
So, if you wanted to reduce the assessment for this number here by any means, because right now we're looking at a 7.86% increase from last year. If you want to reduce it, we could consider some of this bank interest. We've
What's
always
that going to
banked
take? $10, $15 off somebody's bill?
it's insignificant.
Yeah, I would know.
It allows
I'd
it
recommend
allows
leaving it
it
there.
allows a growth.
Yeah.
And so that's why I don't consider that. And then this is the 20,000 from the Brooks.
If we
And
get it, but you
if we
can't
get it, and so that's where you're coming up with. If you look at the 49 and you add this 20,000 on this number here. This difference here, that's what that is. Now it's going to be a little bit.
49 plus 23, that's where you come up with 79. That's bank interest and Brooks, yeah.
And the 6, yeah.
I got it.
Okay.
So do you have anything for emergency?
No.
No, not what I
That's
see in
what
this
we need
budget. At this point, it's $49,000 and maybe another 23 of the Brooks base.
We're not building any kind of
There's
reserve
no reserves in here.
at all.
Nothing.
But didn't the auditor say that should
Yeah.
occur?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's a matter of how. So one, you could say, yeah, we are by not including those other numbers, that because we know we're going to have probably another 70,000 coming in that we're not going to be using.
Has
So
Brooks
then we
ever
should
not
allocate
paid?
it.
Has Brooks ever not paid?
I think there was 1 year they did not
I
pay.
remember, you saying that 1 year.
Question I have, as many years as they've been paying, aren't they obligated to pay now?
I don't know.
Well, here's the thing. Unlike the other services, when they started draining into here, they've been paying. So they owe us to drain in.
Now,
No different than Benita now wants to add that extra pipe they didn't have. They have to get our permission for that. And for that, they have to give us something.
I think it's that concept, but in reverse. If they don't pay, they're not obligated to pay. But if they don't pay, you cut off the pipe.
I said, we close up the pipe, let it back up on their side.
Yeah.
You stop the water.
Exactly.
now, in the years past,
That's why they've been so generous in writing a check, because I think they probably know the same thing that I'm telling you. If they don't pay,
They'll have a
they
lot
don't-
more
they
cost
don't
than
get
$23,000 if they water
Yes.
backs up.
Yeah.
it's a cheap expense,
That is a cheap.
and I think that's why they've paid every year
I
voluntarily.
just want to make sure that if they were to discontinue paying, we send them a letter telling them that if they don't, then we'll cut off the system. Because
Yeah.
I know from what I've learned that we can't make the other areas, for whatever reason, pay for because they put the pipe in without permission, or at least nobody on the board enforced it. So we can't go back and make them pay.
The question becomes their permitting, and whether at the time of the permitting they were allowed to put that pipe into your system. That's where it gets funky. Is if they're permitting from Water Management District, which controls all the water everywhere, it even flows through your system. If Water Management District, for some reason, said, "Yeah, you can connect there, you can put that pipe in there," then there may be some. That's why there were other systems that were able to flow water through you. Was because of Water Management District, I believe.
You mean the main water management
The
district?
South Florida water.
South
Yeah.
Florida. But if they did that to approved Coconut Point or somebody else, yeah, go ahead, you could do that. Now we're suffering the consequences.
Yes, and you can say that back when they were going through their permitting process.
Yeah, but I think like other governmental agencies, like the taxing authority, they tax every other governmental agency for doing the very same thing, and we're running tax money in circles. So if in
Recycling
fact
money.
the Southwest Florida Water Management District said, yeah, you can run that into San Carlos Estates, I think we have a legal right to say, no, you can't, or you pay us.
Yeah.
And if they're not going to obligate the company that they authorized to dump in here, then they have to pay us.
I do not know the status of any of those permits. And I'm sure Mr. Edenfield also does not know. Now,
Oh.
maybe somebody does know, but I don't know, and he doesn't know.
I don't think we want to have to find out,
Are
but I'm just saying that if they for some reason didn't pay us,
You
I
send
think
them the
we
letter.
should send them a letter telling them
Yep.
we're going to cut off the pipe.
Yeah.
So-
you're not authorized, and if you don't pay, then we're going to terminate. We're going to block the pipe.
So let's assume they pay.
Yeah.
And we have the bank interest. Then right now we have a $79,000 quote reserve, and that's it.
And that's
That's
I'll bet you the auditor would
he's
have.
gonna. The auditor's gonna come back
a
and say,
fit.
based on your revenue, based on your expenses, it's probably at least 20-30% reserve.
That Mr. Tuscan, I've heard him say to fire districts anyway. Well, let me think. Yes, the fire districts. He likes them to have he wants them to have 120 days of
Operating
Reserve
money.
money.
Well, we
to
do
get-
have
to get
that.
from
Operating.
September.
We have that set aside, assigned.
That's a reserve. Well, that's what I was asking.
Yeah, we have the 90,000 reserve for operating in the first 3 months, and we have currently 90,000 for emergencies. But I was going to make a
Where's that on the
suggestion
line
and,
item?
and a recommendation. If you go to the very back page, or what was the very back page of your packet, and before we leave the Brooks, let me tell you how that happens. We send them proof of the canal cleaning that Gerald's done, copies of the checks that we paid to have the canal cleaned, with the bill for the $20,000.
So what are they saying?
And why are they
That they are
saying-
paying a part of the
So they're
maintenance
saying
cost of
they're
the canal?
participating in the maintenance.
Of the canal.
Yeah, I mean that's my assumption, but that's what has to happen. That's what happens when we send that out as proof that we've done the cleaning on the canal. Now this year, my intention is to send out the checks where we did the actual hurricane cleanup, canal cleaning,
And send that to
as
them.
well as whatever we end up paying Gerald whenever that happens.
Well, he's supposed to be starting.
No,
Edenfield and him
Because it's always been
supposed to have worked
20,000.
out the agreement, and he should be starting yesterday.
because there's never been any kind of, as far as I know, there's not anything that ties to what we
The
pay.
connection of the dollar to,
Yeah.
to your expense,
To
Right.
the activity.
to
Yeah.
the maintenance.
Okay. So one of the things I did do it was prepare.
Before you leave that, I mean, I don't know, but because you could easily substantiate a substantially higher cost this year because of the storm, you might tell them, I mean, you might think about saying to them, we got the normal 20 grand of cost, but in addition, we expended a substantial sum for your water to be able to flow through our canal. You need to kick up the number this year only another sum of money or something. I don't know.
That's something the board can consider and
Well, we've
tell me to
spent
do.
approximately $200,000, right? Didn't we reserve $200,000
We spent $145,000 for the canal cleanup, if I'm not mistaken.
From the storm.
From the storm.
That was the drainage. Drainage has included some other things, but the number was 163,905 now. But I think at the time it was 140, around 145.
So 160.
But that was not just that was just not the Bonita Bill Canal, because that's all they're caring about is Bonita Bill. So whatever it was.
What
for
we should
Bonita
do
Bill,
is say to Gerald's Tree Services and Thrasher, break down your costs. How much on Benita Bill did you spend there?
Well, didn't Gerald just do Benita bill and Thrasher did the other side?
Yeah.
So then we asked Gerald.
So I have his bill.
What was his bill? Was it like 75,000 or something?
Yes, that one time. But I can
Just
tell
for the,
Benita Bill.
For the
additional
Joel.
cost for Benita Bill.
you. Yeah,
Plus
for
a 23
Benita
would say
And when was that?
bill. After
after you,
Okay, all right. 'Cause
in
you said
November,
just,
December,
and I was
January,
like,
February, he's doing
Okay,
all that cleaning.
so what's his normal bill?
we're paying him this year up to
60 something?
66.4.
64 or something.
66.4.
We-
60
we-
some thousand.
I think we're working on the number of 62 right now.
62, that's a number.
So normally you pay him 62 and they pay you 20.
Mm-hmm.
If this year you also paid him an extra
And they
75,
should pay a third of that.
Yeah, 20.
then that would be,
About a third.
yeah. at
That
least
may be
roughly.
the argument.
Now they might not. All right. So in addition, what was always part of that 66.4 was the 15,000 for the perimeter road tree trimming. So you might take that back. So it's actually more like 52.4.
Okay, so
Well,
even
that's
take
even
a
better
third of
for
that
us.
is another 15,000.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I would do it. Say we took out the tree trimming.
No, I think it goes the other way. If the total number drops by 15 because it's other work, then 20,000 is a higher percentage of that lower number, isn't it? Am I thinking correctly or am I backwards?
Are you talking to me?
Yes.
Oh, I was looking for his bill. Say that again.
The $20,000 that they pay us
Mhm.
is a percentage of
Oh,
cleanup
I
of
understand
that
what you're
canal.
saying. So if he's
Yeah.
normally paid 66, 62, call it 65,000.
And 15
And
of that
15
is
is tree
attributed
trimming.
to
So
something
he's
else.
paying 50,000 and they're paying 20, they're paying 40%.
That's what I'm saying.
So then they're paying 40% of a normal bill.
So then they should
38.17.
pay 40%.
And so 38% of $75,000 extra this year only.
That's how you
Maybe
could
you
send the
send
bill
them
to
a
them.
separate.
I do have a question. I mean, we haven't
Second
received
info.
our money from FEMA yet. Sometimes I don't like to kick a sleeping dog. And they're the only people on the outside giving us any extra money right now.
Do it as a separate
And-
invoice.
And,
Do it as a separate invoice. Send them the 20 grand and say
And then a
in
separate
addition,
invoice.
we've expended this much extra and
Okay.
and
What
would
you worry
you-
about FEMA here is that we got another.
No, I'm not worried about FEMA.
40,000
I'm
they
not-
will-
FEMA doesn't care at all,
Yeah.
one way or the other. FEMA does not care.
You're worried that they're going to say,
I just don't
Trying
want
to
them to all of a sudden have a set of new board members or whatever. And they say, what are we paying this money for anyway?
I think you would have to structure the letter right. I think it would have to be a separate invoice, and it would have to clearly reflect that it is a part of the
Hurricane
additional
Ian,
one-time expense from the hurricane cleanup.
They might
that
even
was-
have insurance for that.
Yeah, that's necessary for water flow to even occur.
Okay.
Maybe
I'm
we
okay
send,
with that. I'm
maybe
okay
we
with
send
something
that
like
bill after they pay the 20,000.
Good idea.
Be an even better
When do they
idea.
normally send the bill?
Give them the 20,000 bill first, will you?
There you go.
Yeah.
I
Thank
send
you
it
for the 20 grand. Now,
in-
Now-
in
now
February
you-
last year.
Okay. You know you're getting money.
Okay.
All right.
Moving along.
Okay, so if you, there was a reason I was coming to this.
The last page.
The last page, and I know it's teeny tiny print, and I apologize. But when I put it on legal paper, it didn't get any bigger.
And is that the one that's separated in two separate pages for us?
Oh yeah, I was trying to make it bigger
So
there
it's
for you.
two
I have it
pages
teeny
for us.
tiny.
These last two pages in the very end.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh, good.
so
11 months ending August 31st. Is that unaudited? Is that what you're showing?
Yeah, that's on the left side.
And that's where I'm going to see my 90,000 reserve.
No. On the right side is the budget amendment through September, which will require a little bit of tweaking still. But I had prepared this so that we would have some kind of an idea of where we were, and we have to do a budget amendment anyway because we have to show where we are so far out of alignment with our original budget, with what our expenditures
The
are.
variances.
We have to account for those variances before 60 days after the year end. Why are you looking at me like that? So
is is it changing the total? Are you?
We're
Do you have a
changing,
change of the total revenue?
the total revenue's not changing. Well, the total revenue is changing a little bit, yes,
Are you Okay, if you're changing the total revenue, then-
because of the bank interest was so much more than we had projected, and our expenses were so much more than what we projected.
Yeah, but the expenses we can explain because
Yeah, we
so
can
much
always.
of
Yeah, it was all hurricane.
yeah.
So
and
we.
your budget, generally speaking, is adopted as a whole. So that's why I was asking if your revenue changes. If the
Yeah.
total revenue changes, then everything, that's a budget amendment that needs to be reflected.
Right. So yes, the revenue does change from 2250. Well, changes from 1213,194 to 1234,407. You have that there. But what I was really wanting you to look at was the 1, 2, and 3 footnotes. I wanted to change the assigned funds for the short-term emergency funds. I was going to recommend this whenever we do this, from 85,000 to 250,000, because that is what we spent. We actually spent 262,000 this year, but that's a more realistic number given our experience with Ian. So I wanted to show to the auditors that, hey, we recognize 85,000 wasn't enough, and we spent 250. That's a realistic number. We need to have that in reserves for our short-term emergency funds. That's also where we have our 3-month operating for post-year-end expenses.
So the 90 makes up the 250. It's part of the 250.
No, the 90 is separate from the 250.
In addition to,
Right. And so that would leave a balance of unassigned funds
902.
to 678,734.
If you change the 85 to 250.
Changing the 85 to 250 and changing the budget amendment, and with the budget amendment, because that figure is the difference between what we end up with and what we have, and making those other adjustments. The other thing I wanted you to kind of take a look at is the projected cash balances as of September 30th. And again, there's some tweaking that needs to be done. But we've always had a healthier budget, a healthier balance in the general maintenance budget than we're going to end up with this year, hypothetically. After we give
Where are you right now?
She's on the second page.
Okay,
right?
all right, good job, gotcha. Thank
The
you.
one
dear.
that says
September.
ended September.
Yeah.
It's the next
Okay,
page.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So after we pay 66.4 to Gerald, I don't have vacuum dig here, and that's why I was asking Audrey earlier today whether she thought we were going to have vacuum dig in this fiscal year payments or not. Because I have to, or even if I pay it in October, it was work done in this
Yep.
fiscal year, so I have to.
Yeah, the
I'm going to have to
question
bring
is
it
for this
forward.
Yes.
the receipt of
So
the invoice.
if
for
I
the work.
take that 18,000, is it 18,000 even or 18?
It's around.
Okay,
It's
if I
full.
take that
18 and change.
18,000,
Yeah.
that's going to take us to 10,997. Now, last year we had a much healthier balance going into October,
Yep.
and we weren't in any way short. But you have to remember that we took 175,000 out of the general maintenance funds, and we moved it over to Florida Prime because we had excess cash and it would earn interest there, which worked to our advantage. But we might need to pull some of that back over as we enter into October.
So are you changing its category?
No.
So
Well,
then
I-
I don't think we need to amend the budget for that.
Well, I want to change the emergency short-term assigned funds.
That will require a
It's going to be
budget
an
amendment,
Yeah.
a resolution.
And then this is the budget amendment number changes that I was projecting, which I do want to do a little more tweaking too, because I don't
Trying
have
to find
vacuum
that
dig in
email.
there.
Which one?
And
The
I would,
18,000 from vacuum dig.
Oh, hold on a second.
the,
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't have it on my personal email now. Everything is done correctly.
we can look at this, but we also, in my mind, we ought to ask the auditor about this in terms of just, are they going to tag us on the audit if we don't do something the right way? If we're going to do something, I want it to be done in a way that they will accept.
So what you see there is I've added the hurricane-related expenses up to the major categories, whereas all year long we've been keeping them separate because we've been kind of monitoring them. But I've thrown them back into the major categories for the final audit and for our annual treasurer's report, which we'll have to make. We don't have to do the budget amendment. I mean, I have it on the agenda for August. I was going to take it off the budget agenda. I was going to take it off the agenda for August meeting because I want to do a little bit more work on it. And whether we put it in September or we wait till October, we're still fine if we wait till October.
I would do it, if it was me, I would do it in October.
Okay.
And be as accurate on September 30th year end as I could.
Okay.
I kind of agree with that because we're 6 weeks out, and we still have bills coming in. We still have.
Well, that's
You know.
this is projecting those bills. And the only bills I really don't know is his and the engineers. So the engineer came in this month, 2,000 more
His is
than I
all pro bono
expected.
the rest of the year.
That's right.
Yeah. Once you get 6 months out, you've lost.
The
You're
rest
on a
of-
He
rolling
charges
6 months.
so much for the first 6 months. The other 6 months is free.
All right.
Cash flow.
So I wanted you to see that for two reasons. One, I wanted you to see that because I think we should increase our assigned funds for short-term emergencies from the 85 to 250. And I wanted you to see kind of where our cash is going to be as we get down into September when we get to start paying all these bills. So this is more on accrual level than it is on actual.
So we're actually going to finalize and approve the budget in October?
No.
No,
This is for this year.
weeks.
This is
Yeah,
correcting
that's what I thought.
So
2023.
So you will adopt your budget. No, you'll do two things. You'll set your assessment rates. We haven't done that yet, right?
No.
Okay, we'll set the assessment rates, and you will adopt your budget for 23-24 in August.
Before the annual meeting.
Before
It has to be done at the
Yeah,
audit.
the reason I questioned that, I thought that's what she was saying,
No, sir.
and I never heard of one ever being done in October.
Oh no.
But no, sir. What we were talking about was the
23.
23 budget, the one we're about to end September 30 of 2023. That's the one that we need to amend to true it up.
Okay.
So
Because we're spending
doing
so
all
much
kinds
out of the reserves for all these things.
We're doing all kinds of movement. You're setting a budget
we
for
don't
next
have
year. You're
assets
amending the budget for
allocated,
this year, and you're setting the assessment rate for next year too.
All right.
All right, so some of these other miscellaneous reports I just provide you so that you could see from a year
I got
ago what the monthly bills were, what they are this year,
I get it. Let's get wrapped up here.
and
I was doing good when we were talking about next year's budget. So the assessment rate.
okay for the general maintenance.
Yes.
Okay, if we leave the budget as what we talked about tonight, if it
With
fits,
the increases.
with the increases,
Slight.
but
Slight increases, yeah.
slight increase. And adding whatever Ron comes up with for the flow survey, because that's going to add to it.
Right now we're at 606,000.
Right now we're at
Or
611,647.
611,000.
With a
Right.
slight increase.
Let's say he comes back and says it's 25,000, 24,000. So we're let's just because I can tell you the survey is not going to be a $5,000 job.
All right. But we did not address Mr. Pringle's concern about a reserve.
Are we going to do reserve then the assessment, or the assessment and reserve? Are they mutually exclusive?
No, he's talking about increasing reserves. Is that not what you're talking about?
Yes, ma'am. I'm talking about have you included any reserves into the assessments? I mean, they do work together. What assessment rates are you proposing, and what reserve does that include, if any? I think what you said before is it does not include
The
any.
only reserve it includes is the bank interest and the 20,000 from the brook.
So there is none. So if it's $600 an acre, if you want to make it 625, we have to say it's 625, and 25 goes to the reserve.
I
Correct?
mean, I have to throw in a reserve
Okay.
category
Well then, so let's start with what's the assessment, because that's the bare bones. What's that?
Just to pay your expenses.
Yes.
And to have, and help me remember, you do have, however, a number for the 90 days of operations at the beginning
Yeah,
of the year.
we have that money assigned
So
and
that
set
is-
aside.
So that is in the number, in the assessment.
That's not in the assessment. That's in our funds balance.
Reserve from before.
Right.
60 or 90. So about the 90,000?
So
So I was looking at the 60.
Okay, so your cash carrying forward that number.
our cash carry forward, based on the budget, or based on the budget amendment, I've got is $1,018,734, of which 250 I was recommending for short-term emergency, 90 for the post-year expenses, leaving us with a unassigned reserve balance of $678,734.
Okay.
But our 23-24 budget is not increasing, does not have anything to increase the reserves.
Okay. That's
So, do you
yes.
feel that that's an issue or no?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
If you have, my concern was I was not seeing any signed reserves categories for the emergency expenses that the auditor wants us to have, or for those first 90 days of operation before we start receiving revenue.
Right.
I
That's
just didn't
because this
see
is
that,
kind
but
of
it's in here.
this is the long version.
But
This is
you're
not.
saying it's in there.
Yeah, it's going to be in there.
Okay. If those two numbers are in your assessment rate for this 23-24 year, then you don't have to have any other reserves.
Right. It's in the cash forward. It's in the cash forward balance.
Okay.
And what's the amount you want to have for the emergency funds?
250
250
Okay.
plus
Which
the
is-
90 she's already set aside.
for
Right.
the
That's for the
Yeah.
90 days of
Yes.
maintenance.
Operating.
Just-
from
okay.
October 1 to December 30.
Which in the past we've never had to use, but we might have to use it. We
If
might have to
people
pull
don't-
back
yeah.
some of that
We're
money.
waiting for the tax revenues. I understand.
Um,
So what's the number that we're going to then do the assessment on?
if we don't make any changes to this,
Except Ron's.
I mean, all right. So if you want me to throw, how much would you
Put
want?
25,000 in. Let Ron tell me tomorrow otherwise.
All right, I'll just throw it into 25.
Yep. Under
What's the
engineering.
assessment rate? So the phase 1 assessment rate stays the same. It doesn't change.
Don't understand that.
That's going to take that takes the dollar amount, the expenses total to 636,647, or our gross revenue amount to $668,747, which is a $614.15 per acre assessment, which is a 12% increase, or $67.12 an acre, or $83.91 for an acre and a quarter.
And what did we do?
A 12% increase
Yeah, I was gonna
year
say.
to year.
Yeah, and what did we do? Didn't we ask for what? A 5% last year?
No, we were.
We were
high.
we were a lot higher.
We were really high last year.
It was like 20%.
Yeah, it was a real tall number.
So if we get asked at the annual shareholders meeting, say we're actually increasing it a lot less than last year. Right? If last year was 20%, what was the percentage we increased last year? Because I know that was a big deal.
I can get that.
And we're going to do a 12% this year.
I just wonder how you explain.
In 2 years, you're 32%.
Yeah, I mean, you know, if we stated cost of living, we're at 7. What was cost of living?
In May, it was 4%, 3.86% in May.
So 3
Yeah,
times
year-
12
year
is
over year.
36%. We're right there in 2 years.
But we've added that to the numbers. You want last year's budget?
I mean, the hurricane answers a lot of questions for us, but it's still.
But we don't want to make that an excuse either.
Well, it may have to be. I mean, unless you can come up with a better one for 12%.
Well, and I think if you said it is because of the storm that we are not able to have a flatter percentage, lower percentage, then in a year or two you're going to have to drop
Lower
that
it down.
percentage when you don't have a storm event to justify that increase.
Well, then what's our excuse for having to raise it? That's what I want to know. I mean,
It was 20.05% last year.
So 20.04, so it's called 20% last year, this year's 12%.
Well, you're doing some things this upcoming year that you didn't do or have in prior years, which is the flow survey. You're having all the meetings with the counties and the city and FEMA for potential grants and for
yeah, but that
funding
just,
from
that
other
just reflects
sources.
on the engineer's costs and or the attorney's fees. It doesn't reflect anything else because we don't have any. I mean, I didn't get paid out of it, so.
No, I'm talking about next year. We're not talking about last
okay.
year.
Okay.
We're talking next year.
Okay.
You're asking why are we justifying a 12% increase? What's increased? These are the things that we're trying to get money so that you don't have to pay things in the future, and these are the costs that associated
If we
with
can
doing
explain
that.
them out, that the objective is that we're going to try to get government money instead of you having to pay these really big fees that are looking down the road, lurking at us, then let's decide what those are. And I mean, I can see the cleaning of the ditches. That's hundreds of thousands of dollars. The culvert pipes alone are hundreds of thousands of dollars. I mean, it's either, somewhere it's got to get paid to be done.
Yeah. And those do constitute real savings because
If we
you're
can-
not going to have to spend the money to do that.
If we can, for a lower amount, be paid to go to these meetings to get the money.
So you have added an internship cost.
That's not that
I know,
much though, yeah.
I know, but it all adds up.
Well-
Every little penny adds up to another penny till you get to the 12%.
Well, not just that, we are looking to come into compliance to make sure that we have that 250,000
I'm glad
emergency.
Audrey has to stand up and ask for that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
actually the
that's
manager's
the
going to explain all
That's
this.
right. That's right,
all
by
right.
the way. That's
Board
right.
delegates
So,
the
you're the
manager.
You know,
one-
we're
explain
just trying
all
to get into compliance.
Yes, ma'am. No, you're the one that has to explain. You missed
The
all
board
that.
just,
Yeah, no.
yeah, board just agreed.
We just tossed it all on you.
I totally get it.
We're not
That's
even gonna show
direction.
up.
That's not a decision. That's
We're gonna
just
have
direction.
PowerPoint
I'm gonna
facsimiles of us
shrivel
up
up
there.
like a raisin in my seat.
Little face
But-
battles.
Correct me if I'm wrong. That's what we need to do. We have to be in compliance with Tuscan, is to have those allocated funds. And on average, it's my understanding, small districts have about a $250,000 emergency fund, and then they have also allocated the 90 days of expenses.
But we already
So-
have that money. We're not
I know,
trying
but
to get to
we
it.
have not in the past.
Yeah, we have.
The 250,000.
Oh, the 90.
We
Those,
just
those
all
are
the,
those are all cash. Those
all
are all
that
cash
did was
carry forwards.
reduce our unassigned reserves from 900,000 to 678,000.
Okay.
So that's
So
all
it was
cash
there, it
carry
was just
forward.
somewhere else.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I
That
apologize.
that has been accumulated over
Okay.
the years to the total reserve number of a million-ish.
Yeah, I mean, we
It was
start-
over $1
we-
million.
Yeah,
I
Yeah,
remember that.
okay.
we started the year. The audit had us start the year at $1,037,679, our funds balance, and we had projected that we would end the year at $1,077,660.
And it's
With
600
with
something.
with the projected budget amendments that I had put together, we're projecting that we would end our cash fund balance forward would be $1,018,734, or about $59,000 less before vacuum dig. Now, once I take vacuum dig out, we're just going to be just over $1 million. So we're $78,000 over or less than what we projected we would be at this time of the year. But we spent $262,000 on hurricane repairs and damages. So
That might be how you
And
explain
that
this.
was my point.
That's
what
probably
I-
how that has to be explained.
That was my point. We can, all that $200,000 that we had spent, that could been our reserve. Now we need to replenish that. We can't leave ourselves with a hole and not be ready for something.
And I also think some of the increase of the budget is working on the steps required by the statute to have a water control plan. Since the last one was done 18 years ago.
I wouldn't broadcast it.
I wouldn't.
I'm telling you guys, we have to have.
Hey,
a
David
water
already
plan.
knows that. He keeps talking about it.
No, so yes, sir. Why is the budget increasing by 12%? You have additional engineering costs that to do the water control plan and also the surveying work that you're anticipating. You have the reimbursement of the one-time expenditures for all of the hurricane activity that you had to do and that you had to use reserves to do that now need to be reimbursed. And that cost alone of $250,000, right?
262.
$262 on a percentage basis of your budget is more than the 12% increase. Right there. That's the number right there. Is just covering the cost of the
Well, if we normally end up
hurricane.
about $1 million, we're asking for 250 reserve. It's 25% increase.
No, yeah, but you're not.
No, we're not asking for
No, I'm not asking for 25, but I'm saying
Yeah, if
we're
you
trying to
did.
put 25% back
if
in.
you- No, yes, sir. If you put every penny back in,
Yes.
then that would be the percentage.
That's right.
It would not be a 12%. It would be a,
20 over 25%.
so.
Oh,
So
okay.
you're not trying to recover it all at one time, but you do need to be physically sound and recover it, and you do have some additional costs as well for these one-time costs for the water control plan and the survey. Does all that make sense?
Yeah,
Kind of, sort of.
and I know that Jim wanted to keep it around. I know he doesn't like the 7.86%. He wanted to keep it, or 12%. He really wanted to keep it as close to 4%. As we could. But I don't think you're going to get the survey done that way then.
Well,
And you're not going to get some of these other things done.
let's see
Unless
what
you pay
Ron
for it
comes
out
back
of
with.
reserves. Unless you pay for it out of reserves.
And that's a possibility. Do you want to reduce your reserves to pay for some of those extra things?
I don't know, but I tell you, you keep tapping away at the reserves.
It's
never
not
gonna
a good
get 'em
thing.
That's 25 years of money put in there.
And not only that, but you're about to run out of your phase one expenses, and you're
Right.
about to have to do substantial maintenance. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
And that's what those reserves were built for all along, was for that eventual occurrence. And it's upon you. It's now. I have another water control district that put off buying capital improvements for way too long.
Yeah.
And when it finally had to be done, I mean, they waited until it had to be done, and then they
Sure, they were
had
taking loans out.
$1.1 million.
Yeah.
They took out $1.1 million, and that was only half of what they needed.
Oh my God.
Yes,
Yeah. So
and so it's a killer
Yeah.
when you finally have to write the check.
Sure.
If you haven't built up a considerable reserve
correct.
in the meantime.
And I do think we need to start. Maybe next year.
Okay.
Okay.
We're going to end the meeting, so we stop
Yeah.
recording.
Thank you.
So
Are we
the work-
adjourned,
we adjourned?
Mr.
Make a
Mr.
motion,
Chairman?
we adjourn the meeting.
I second the motion.
Thank you.